Chapter 259. Who is that? He's quite young. So young. Which famous family did he come from? Most of the people present were celebrities, or they were brought here by celebrities. For example, Noah, after disguising himself as the executive director of the unnamed company under the Dawn organization. He also brought Ivanli, Julie, Tachaba, and 2 bodyguards, Kyujituryu and Okihokasaki. Therefore, those who would be here were either celebrities or people under celebrities. After all, they were celebrities, so they wouldn't point and talk like passers-by. After looking at Noah, they began to guess Noah's identity, but they didn't discuss it. Although they didn't discuss it openly, the scrutinizing gazes that were cast in their direction from time to time made Ivanli, Tachaba, Yujituryu, Kurosaki, and the others secretly nervous. Noah ignored those scrutinizing gazes and glanced around the entire venue. He only stopped when he saw the wall on the side. On both sides of the venue, there were people in black suits standing side by side on the left side of the wall. They were obviously bodyguards, and there was a group of maids standing side by side on the right side of the wall. Although the bodyguards and the maids were wearing the same clothes, there were still some differences between them. Noah understood what was going on. These bodyguards and maids should be brought here by the celebrities in the venue. With the identity of bodyguards and maids, there was naturally no way to enter the social circle of the celebrities. Therefore, the bodyguards and maids should be arranged to one side to wait for orders. Understanding this, Noah turned his head slightly and said to the group of young men and women, "You guys wait for orders first." The group of young men and women were slightly startled at first, but when they noticed the bodyguards and maids on both sides, they immediately understood and nodded in unison. However, except for Julie, there was still a trace of stiffness on everyone's face, as if they were still very nervous. Seeing this, Noah smiled. "Don't be nervous. In such an occasion, no one will communicate with bodyguards and maids. Bodyguards and maids don't dare to be sneaky in such a formal occasion. They will abide by the rules. You just stay there like those people. Don't talk. You just need to adapt to the situation." After saying this, Noah waved his hand and walked into the venue. His carefree attitude eased the tension in the hearts of the group of young men and women. "Amazing," he said with admiration. "He's just like a real celebrity. He's not nervous at all." "Undoubtedly, this is his first mission," Ivanli exclaimed. "That guy really does everything almost perfectly. Could it be that there's nothing he can't do? After all, double tripping blades is a true young mistress. It's only natural that she would be affected." Orange Bar nodded his head in admiration and said in a low voice, "We'll do what Noah said. Just wait on the side and don't talk to anyone. This way, we won't expose our identities." Hearing this, the group of young women nodded. Under the lead of Orange Bar, who was the head maid in name, Ivanli held Julie's hand, who was looking around curiously. Together with Ya, they walked towards the group of maids on the right. Totaru and Oe Totaru had been watching Noah. When they saw Noah enter the venue with ease, as if it was a matter of course, they looked at each other. Totaru and Oe Totaru looked at each other. Totaru and Oe Totaru looked at each other. Then, the two of them silently walked towards the group of bodyguards on the left and joined the group. Noah had participated in many occasions where all kinds of celebrities gathered together, since he had lived in both worlds. Although his identity in the previous 2 worlds was special, he didn't interact with all kinds of people like a real celebrity. However, even if he hadn't eaten pork, how could he not have seen pigs run? Therefore, Noah was very comfortable in this kind of situation. After casually dealing with a few people who came over with wine glasses to make friends, Noah began to really look around the venue. Needless to say, Noah didn't know the people here. The only one he really knew was a young woman in the center of a lively circle in front of the venue. She was wearing a bright and gorgeous red dress. Almost everyone's eyes were focused on her. She stole the hearts and gazes of many people of the opposite sex and the same sex. She had a confident smile on her face as usual. She was surrounded by a strong sense of presence and charm. She was so gorgeous that she couldn't be more eye-catching. Her dazzling blonde hair was fixed to the left side of her head with a red hairband. It hung down like a ponytail, The young woman was surrounded by a circle of famous men and women. Her every move exuded a terrifying charm. She was like the center of the world, extremely dazzling. I believe that 90% of the people here, especially those young men, would be conquered by such a beautiful girl with a strong background, temperament, and strong temperament. They would unconsciously join that circle in an attempt to get a smile from the goddess, right? Not to mention, the young woman could basically be considered as the owner of today's and tomorrow's appreciation meeting. Looking at the young woman who gathered in the circle of famous men and women, chatting with a smile on her face while her eyes vaguely swept around, as if she was looking for something, Noah shook his head with a smile. At this time, a voice sounded beside Noah. "You want to join that circle, right?" Following such a voice, a man wearing a noble tuxedo and holding a glass of red wine came to Noah's side and raised his glass to Noah in a friendly manner. "Let me introduce myself, I'm Bliss from England. Just call me Noah." Noah also raised the glass full of red wine in his hand and clinked glasses with the man named Bliss. They both took a sip and got to know each other. In fact, with Noah's age, he was still not allowed to drink in this country. However, in countries like England, people usually started to drink when they reached Noah's age. Therefore, in such an occasion, except for the real brats, everyone would more or less drink a little due to their status. Although Noah didn't know much about drinking, he could be considered to have done as the Romans did. After getting to know each other, Bliss turned his gaze to the most lively circle at the front. He looked at the young woman in the center of the circle, who was surrounded by people, and said with envy, "That young lady is the daughter of the president of the very famous Burritos company in our country. Every famous person in England knows her. Her status is not ordinary, and she's so beautiful. Generally, people without status wouldn't dare to go over even if they wanted to." Hearing this, Noah was a little surprised. Although he already knew that Lilith was a real young lady, Lilith seemed to be more famous than Noah thought, and her status was also more noble than he imagined. After all, everyone here was a celebrity. Even a celebrity said that people without status shouldn't go over there. It was imaginable how noble Lilith's status was. If you can talk to that young lady, it's also good. If you can make friends with that young lady, you can't earn more. And if you can win the heart of that young lady, I believe that as long as you are a man, you will be so happy that you want to die. Bliss sighed. Now the people around that young lady are all from noble families. If you can't compare with them, then don't go over, or you will be a joke. Hearing this, Noah didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Bliss thought that Noah wanted to win Lilith's favor like those people around Lilith. So he came over to warn him? If Bliss knew that the goddess in his heart was sleeping on the same bed as the person beside him every day, and they were even taking off their clothes, how wonderful would his expression be? Just as Noah was about to say something to Bliss, a voice rang in his head. "Sure enough, you are also here." Undoubtedly, the content of the voice was polite, but the tone was full of arrogance and indifference. The very pretentious voice made Noah's eyes narrow, and he turned his head and looked behind him. What entered Noah's eyes was a white boy with a smile on his face and cold eyes. Chapter 260. Long time no see. Let's talk about this first. Not long ago, they were defeated by Noah's hands. The self-proclaimed God's destroyer troop, Kay, was not wearing the steel suit that they saw last time. Instead, he was wearing an ordinary suit with a tie. Looking at Noah standing in front of him, Kay had a smile on his face, but his cold eyes were staring at Noah. He said to Noah, "It's my honor to see you again so soon, Noah Doria." Noah, who turned around, gradually restrained his expression under Kay's cold eyes and fake smile. Why did Kay appear here? This question was not important. Ever since he knew that Kay was released by the 99th lunar night, Noah felt that Kay would appear in front of him again sooner or later. Therefore, although he was a bit surprised that Kay would appear in front of him at this time and place, Noah was not surprised and only smiled faintly. "Is that so? But I don't want to see you at all. You're still the same as before." Kay smiled indifferently. "You don't hold back at all when you speak, as expected of that young lady's partner." Saying this, Kay's gaze vaguely glanced in Lilith's direction, making Bliss, who was on the side, ask Noah in a daze, "That your friend?" "No. Noah shook his head. We can't be considered friends. Indeed, we can't be considered friends. Kay smiled at Bliss in a friendly manner. You should be considered an opponent, right? Opponent. Noah was a bit sarcastic. Only those who are evenly matched can be considered an opponent, right? Can you be considered my opponent? What he meant was that Kay did not have the qualifications to be his opponent. Regarding this, Kay still smiled indifferently, but the air around him became a bit colder, making Bliss shiver. For Bliss, who lived an ordinary life like a rich family's child, it was impossible for him to know the reason why the air around him suddenly became cold. This was because Bliss couldn't sense the source of the chilling aura emanating from Kay's body-killing intent. Of course, just because Bliss couldn't feel the killing intent didn't mean that he couldn't feel the bad atmosphere between Noah and Kay. At that moment, Bliss pretended to laugh freely and raised the cup in his hand. Since the two of you are old acquaintances, then I won't disturb the two of you. See you at the ball tonight. Take care. Noah and Kay also raised their glasses at Bliss and watched him leave. After Bliss's departure, the atmosphere around Noah and Kay became even worse. However, in this terrible atmosphere, Kay retracted his murderous aura and bowed pretentiously to Noah. Please allow me to introduce someone to you. While saying this, Kay moved his body to the side, allowing Noah's gaze to pass through his original position and look behind him. There was a thin old man in his 70s wearing a white coat. It was unknown whether he was a doctor or a scholar, but he was walking towards them step by step with a cane. The old man's hair was so white that it was impossible to see his original hair color. However, from the other party's blue eyes and high nose, hidden behind the glasses that resembled reading glasses, the other party should also be a Westerner. Looking at the Westerner old man slowly walking in front of him, Noah stared at him for a while. When the old man was in front of him, Noah smiled. His smile was full of evil intentions. Equipment Smith? The old man was stunned. Even Kay was stunned. It was obvious that he didn't expect Noah to suddenly say this name. Upon seeing their reactions, Noah confirmed his guess and curled his lips into a smile. Looks like I guessed right. Guessed? The old man recovered from his shock. He narrowed his eyes and laughed out loud. In the beginning, when Kay reported that the person who defeated him and the 10-man team of God's destruction team was a student, I was still curious as to what kind of person he was. So that's how it is. You are even more outstanding than I thought. You can call me Edward. The old man who called himself Edward, but in reality, he was the same as the 99th lunar night. He developed a method that allowed people to obtain power that surpassed humans. The power of the God Destroyer team has been demonstrated a few days ago. It was created by strengthening the body with the battle suit known as the equipment steel. What do you think? It's not bad compared to you surpassers, right? Hearing this, Noah frowned. In terms of strength alone, the God's Destroyer squad that was equipped with the steel suit was indeed not weak. At least, from the standard of surpassers, the God Destroyer team that could match the level 2 surpassers did have a considerable amount of power. But what does this have to do with me? Noah spread out his hands. I'm just a student. Even if I admit that the God Destroyer team is not inferior to a normal surpasser, what's the use? Whether you're a student or not, you're still a surpasser. As an individual with the power of surpassers, you're the most suitable person to evaluate my equipment steel. Edward seemed to be eager for recognition as he spoke to Noah enthusiastically. Moreover, you seem to be a very special individual. You are qualified to comment on my pretending to be steel. Although he said this, his face was full of enthusiasm, but Edward's words of individual had already exposed his inner thoughts. Obviously to Edward, Noah Doria was only an individual that he was interested in. Rather than saying that Edward treated Noah as a target for evaluation, it was more accurate to say that he treated Noah as a reference to compare with his own invention. If that's the case, then let me tell you my opinion. Noah suddenly smiled and said this. Something that can only match a group of level 2 students. No matter how you look at it, it can't be considered good, right? Edward's smile froze, but after a while he recovered and laughed. Indeed, it's just a half-finished product that hasn't been adjusted. Moreover, although the ones wearing it are trained soldiers, they're still just normal humans. Normal humans? Noah looked straight at Edward. What do you mean by that? My meaning is very simple. Edward chuckled, but his eyes behind his glasses were fixed on Noah. There was a trace of fanaticism in his eyes. Do you want to come to my side? The surrounding air became slightly heavy, from the original vile atmosphere to somewhat heavy. Noah held the glass, sipped the red wine, and said casually, You want to rope me in? I want to see what level of power you can obtain after wearing the armored steel. Edward's tone was somewhat excited. A group of normal soldiers wearing my armored steel can obtain power similar to a surpasser. If you, as a surpasser, were to wear the armored steel, under the double enhancement of the daybreak star pattern and armored steel, how high would your strength be? Hearing this, Noah's heart was slightly moved, but after thinking about it he calmed down. Even the daybreak star pattern, that could strengthen the human body and spirit, could not give him any more power. How much power would the armored steel, which could only strengthen the body, give him? Originally, Noah's body was already strong to the point that the daybreak star pattern could not strengthen it much. He believed that even if he changed to armored steel, it would still be the same. With this thought, Noah glanced at Edward. Sorry, I'm not interested. Your will is quite firm. As a student, you can actually not be tempted by power. The excitement on Edward's face disappeared little by little, and he looked at Noah with deep meaning. However, I haven't given up on the idea of combining a surpasser and a god's destroyer. Leaving this sentence, Edward took the silent K and left. Looking at the back of the two people, Noah curled his lips, but his heart was in deep thought. Chapter 261. The appraisal of the mysterious shattered feather, held by the Dawn organization, would be officially held tomorrow. Today, in addition to the ball in the evening, the main purpose was to let the celebrities from various countries, who came to participate in the appraisal, to gather together. 99 lunar nights would appear and say one or two opening remarks as a welcome. Then, 99 lunar nights would let the celebrities who came to participate in the appraisal return to their prearranged rooms to rest. At this time, Noah was in a luxurious suite in the hotel. However, this room was not Noah's but Lilith's. Under Sarah's unwilling support, Noah sneaked into Lilith's room in order to not expose his identity. He told Lilith about his encounter with Equipment Smith and Kay at the venue. They really came? Lilith, who was still wearing a brightly colored dress and had changed her hairstyle, sat on the edge of the bed with the aura of a noble lady. Her face showed an expression that said it was expected. Blaze Diabolica, special, and the extremely mysterious shattered feather. With so many elements that could move that person, it would be strange if they didn't come. I see. Noah looked at Lilith in a daze. She did not show any signs of surprise. After a while he sighed. Did you already know that they would come? In fact, if he thought about it carefully, it was natural that Lilith would not be surprised by Edward and Kay's appearance. After all, Edward and Kay's appearance was completely predictable. According to some information revealed by Kay, when he wanted to kidnap Lilith, the person standing behind Kay, Edward, who developed Equipment Smith, had a motive for wanting to obtain 99 lunar nights and Lilith. Kay said that he kidnapped Lilith mainly because the security around 99 lunar nights was too tight. It was not easy to obtain, so he made a move on Lilith in an attempt to negotiate with the Dawn organization through Lilith. Now that he thought about it, Noah felt that the so-called negotiation, and the purpose of wanting to obtain 99 lunar nights, should be for the Dawn Star rune. To be more precise, it should be to obtain the Surpasser. This was because Edward had said that he wanted to combine the Transcendents and the God Destroyers. Thus, Edward and Kay came to this appreciation party. Needless to say, 99 lunar nights and Lilith were here. And Shattered Feather was a mysterious item that even the Dawn organization could not decipher. Regardless of whether it was to achieve his goal or to satisfy his curiosity as a researcher, Edward would still come. After all, the security around the 99 lunar nights would definitely not be as tight as it was in the academy. More or less, he would be able to find an opportunity to make a move. Who the hell is that old guy? Noah looked at Lilith. If Blaze Diabolica refers to 99 knights who researched the daybreak star pattern and created the surpasser, and Equipment Smith refers to Edward who developed the steel installation and created the God's Destroyer, then are there other people who are researching the power that surpasses humans? Lilith fell silent. Seeing Lilith's reaction, Noah knew that he had hit the nail on the head. Ever since Kay had appeared with the God's Destroyer team, Noah had been suspecting that since there were God's Destroyer existences that surpassed humans, then were there other people in this world who were researching the same power? The facts proved that Noah's guess was indeed accurate. At that moment, Noah did not say anything more. He just looked at Lilith and waited for Lilith's answer. After a period of stifling silence, Lilith spoke up after an unknown amount of time. Equipment Smith, real name Edward Walker, is a research expert who is proficient in mechanical engineering. In addition to being good at developing engines and propulsion systems, he is also dedicated to the development of artificial muscles. Miss, on the side Sarah, who had been silent, suddenly became anxious. That is the secret of the Dawn organization. So I won't say it a second time. Lilith casually dropped this sentence, making Sarah speechless. She continued to speak as if nothing had happened. Edward was originally the second in command of the Dawn organization's development bureau. This sentence made Noah somewhat stunned. Edward, who wanted to kidnap the 99th lunar night and kidnap Lilith to negotiate with the Dawn organization in an attempt to obtain the Dawn star pattern, was the second in command of the Dawn organization's development bureau? When he was still in the Dawn organization, Edward strongly advocated the development of external skeletal attire that subverted the knowledge of the past, but he could not get the understanding and recognition of those around him. Lilith picked up a cup of milk tea and drank it little by little. The reason is very simple. Because the concept proposed by Edward is fundamentally different from the Dawn organization's research on the power of the soul. How could it be understood and recognized by others? Noah nodded. The final product of Edward's research on external skeletal attire, equipment steel. It was like a piece of equipment, worn on the body, and through the strengthening of the equipment, it would increase the strength of the person. Although the Dawn star pattern was a nanomachine, it could also be regarded as a piece of equipment worn on the body. However, its root was to draw out the power of the soul, so that the owner's body, spirit, and other aspects could be improved. The two, one focused on external, one focused on internal, and there was no place for them to meet. So 12 years ago, Edward suddenly disappeared, and since then his whereabouts have been unknown. Lilith took a sip of milk tea and continued. The second in command of the organization disappeared, and even the information that was still in research and had already been developed were all deleted by him. This caused a lot of chaos in the Dawn organization at that time, and it also brought a lot of trouble. But now, it seems that the trouble this old man brought was bigger than expected. Noah also laughed bitterly. Because of the difference in ideology, they parted ways. Noah had seen this kind of situation many times in the world of the Dark Bullet. Not to mention other things, Sheng Tianzi and Qiwu Zhongshuan were fundamentally different in ideology, which caused the two people to be destined to walk two paths that were absolutely impossible to cross, and also impossible to walk together. Indeed, as you said, in addition to the surpassers and God's destroyer, there are other existences in this world that can surpass human beings. Lilith put down the cup of milk tea in her hand and looked directly at Noah, because in addition to the Blaze Diabolica, who created the surpassers, and the Equipment Smith, who created the God's Destroyer, in this world, there are 5 other people who are researching the power that surpasses human beings. 7 luminaries reign. Lilith spat out this unknown title. That is the title of the researchers with the absolute duo as the core. Blaze Diabolica and Equipment Smith are 2 of them. After that, Lilith took a deep breath and sighed again. Now the person who is about to bring us trouble is such a person. Noah, who quietly slipped out of Lilith's room, walked in the corridor back to his room and fell into deep thought. 7 luminaries reign. I'm afraid that's the real source of the mystery that brought unknown to this world. Knowing this, Noah's last doubts about this world dissipated. To be honest, Noah was quite interested in what kind of power the other members of the 7 luminaries' reign possessed that could surpass human beings. However, as members of the 7 luminaries' reign, the power that the 99 lunar knights and Edward had mastered could not bring him any improvement. Then presumably, the other members of the 7 luminaries' reign should be the same, right? Besides, Noah did not have time to continue to explore the power of the other 7 luminaries' reign. Turning his head, looking out the window, looking at the gradually darkening sky, Noah whispered softly, "After all, after getting the world fragment, I have to leave." Chapter 262. Walladash. The sound of water echoed in the quiet space filled with mist. In the spacious bathtub, Julie's long silver hair stuck to her smooth skin. Her body was soaking in the water. She squinted her eyes, and her emotionless, delicate face entered an extremely relaxed state. She even exhaled contentedly. So comfortable, isn't it? Ivan leaned against the side of the bathtub, even under the cover of the mist and ripples. His beautiful figure still faintly showed his beautiful side. He looked at Julie, who had a comfortable expression on her face, and narrowed his eyes in pleasure. As expected of the luxurious hotel chosen by the Dawn organization, it's unfair that such a large bathtub is only used by those celebrities. After being led to the prearranged room by the attendants would inform the celebrities who came to participate in the appreciation party of the existence of the bathtub. As the hotel's most famous bathtub, the celebrities who came to participate in the appreciation party today and tomorrow had the opportunity to enjoy themselves in this large bathtub. Of course, it was only limited to those with noble status. As for the maids Ivanli, Julie, Tachibana, and Nya, the 4 of them were not allowed to enter the bathtub. Therefore, the group of girls all snuck in, under Ivanli's instigation, including Tachibana and Nya. Tachibana tied her long black hair into a ponytail and soaked in the bathtub, not to be outdone, showing off her delicate body that was not inferior to Ivanli's. Her white skin was covered with water droplets, and half of her body was submerged in the water. She couldn't help but let out a satisfied sound. However, very quickly, Tachibana's face was filled with worry. "But is it okay if we just come in?" "Yes." Nya hugged her body, curled up, and stayed in the corner of the bathtub. She said uneasily, "Isn't it only the celebrities who can come in? Can't we come in?" Don't worry. Ivanli smiled at Tachibana and Nya. "Before coming, I already asked the attendants. During this time, the celebrities are in their rooms, choosing the dresses they need for the ball tonight. At least, no one will come here for at least an hour." The hair on Julie's head shook. "Can we monopolize this bathtub?" That's right. Ivan nodded and said regretfully, "Although it's only an hour, I think it's better for us to get out of here as soon as possible." Orange Bar, who was the most composed, shook his head. "Maybe there will be maids and bodyguards who sneak in like us?" Ivan didn't seem to have thought of this, and he began to stammer. "There shouldn't be, right? You're not even sure yourself, are you?" Orange Bar glared at Ivanli and grew nervous. It can't be that a boy will suddenly barge in, right? As soon as he said this, the entire bath fell into an indescribable silence, because this was entirely possible. There was only one luxurious bath in the entire hotel. Therefore, the hotel staff would specify which time period was for the men to use, and which time was for the women to use. The time period where Ivanli, Julie, Tachibana, and Yurin had not been arranged. If there was any arrangement, it would be the not available time period. If there was someone like Ivanli, Julie, Tachibana, and Nya who wanted to sneak in to enjoy themselves, it was entirely possible that it was a boy. At this moment, the group of 4 girls began to feel uneasy. We should hurry up," Ivanli said with a smile. We still have work to do later." "Yeah." Julie was the first to nod. Looking at her blushing face, she was definitely worried that her delicate body would be seen by the opposite sex. That's right." Tachibana immediately rubbed her body with her face flushed red, as if a boy would barge in if she washed too slowly. "Everyone hurry up. You didn't say anything, and only nodded vigorously. In order to wash her body, you finally let go of the hands that had been protecting her body. As soon as she let go, Yago, who had the best figure among the girls, was seen by all of the girls. Looking at Suego, who was hiding in the corner, Ivanli, Julie, and Tachibana all fell silent. Ya's face was completely red, and she hurriedly extended her hands to protect her body again. She pressed her body into the water, and even half of her face was soaked in the water, blowing bubbles. The silence lasted for 10 seconds. After 10 seconds, Julie, who was staring at Ya's chest with her deep red eyes, said innocently, "Ya's are really big, they look fine." Jolie-chan. Ya blushed and bashfully soaked her face in the water. Ivanli and Tachibana looked at each other, and finally put on a fake smile. "Let's hurry up and wash." "Yeah, hurry up and wash." With that said, Ivan and Tachibana began to wash their bodies stiffly. At this moment, a voice sounded outside the bathtub. "This is the bathtub that the waiter mentioned, right?" The group of girls, including Julie, all sucked in a cold breath. After returning to the room, Noah didn't see Ivanli, Julie, Tachibana, and Ya, which made Noah a bit distressed. Ninefold Turyu and Oki Hokasaki, who disguised themselves as bodyguards, needed to patrol the surrounding area with the other celebrities' bodyguards. And the group of girls who came with Noah as maids needed to help their nominal master, namely Noah, pick out the costumes for the evening ball. However, Noah only left for a while to go to Lilith's room, and when he returned, the girls were gone. Were they ordered to take care of the tomb guards in the Dawn organization at the last minute? Noah, who couldn't choose a costume and didn't believe in his own eyes, could only walk out of the room gloomily. "Forget it, I'll go take a bath first." The waiters were full of praise for the hotel's bathtub. Since the girls weren't there, Noah simply went to enjoy the big bathtub, which was also good. Presumably, as long as he told the waiters in the hotel would open the unoccupied bathtub for Noah alone. This was the so-called benefit of being a celebrity, being able to enjoy privileges that ordinary people didn't have. Even if one person used the bathtub, it would be too big. And indeed, Noah obtained the right to use the bathtub just by telling the waiters. Looking at the huge space in front of him that seemed to be built with marble, and the endless hot water flowing from the wolf-shaped carvings carved on the pillars, filling the whole space with steam, Noah's mood suddenly became better. Without hesitation, Noah quickly took off his clothes and soaked in the bathtub. The temperature of the water wasn't high, and it was controlled just right, so Noah's cold skin quickly warmed up. Phew! Soaking in the bathtub, Noah breathed a sigh of relief, closed his eyes, and his heart became active. The shattered feather, defined by the Dawn organization. That was the purpose of Noah coming to this world. As long as he obtained the world fragment, named Shattered Feather, Noah's fundamental purpose of coming to this world would be achieved. Now the world fragment was in this hotel that was as big as a building. And in order to not have a conflict with Ivan, Julie, Lilith, Tachaba, and Ya, who stood on the side of the Dawn organization, Noah must obtain the world fragment without exposing his identity. Unfortunately, this world probably wouldn't give Noah any more hints regarding the world fragment, because the world had no way to interfere with the world. At this time when Noah was closest to the world fragment, the world had no way to give Noah any hints. Therefore, Noah had to find the location of the world fragment by himself. As he thought about it, Noah came to a decision. Let's try to find it in the hotel tonight. After making such a decision, Noah began to plan for the night's action. Pop! Suddenly beside the bathtub, a somewhat loud sound of water echoed. Noah, who was thinking about the action at night, froze, frowned, turned his head, and looked in the direction of the sound. Chapter 263. Bo 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 bo. Noah turned his gaze to the source of the sound, and saw that behind a thick stone pillar, the water surface was bubbling with a loud splash sound. Bubbling? Noah's face showed a suspicious look. Is the bathtub broken? If Noah had unleashed his superb sensing ability, he definitely wouldn't have thought so. Unfortunately, under the situation where he didn't sense any danger, hostility, or abnormality, Noah wouldn't activate his sensing ability immediately. It was also because he didn't sense any danger, hostility, or abnormality, that Noah suspected that the bathtub was broken. Thus, Noah stood up from the bathtub and walked over. Because of the shadow near the pillar, Noah couldn't see very clearly. However, the water behind the pillar was bubbling more and more intensely. Noah could still see it clearly. Noah, who thought that the bathtub was broken, stretched out his hand towards the bubbling water and reached into the water, trying to touch the broken part. Phew! In the next second, Noah's palm seemed to have grabbed something. Bo 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 bo! In an instant, the bubbles on the water became more lively. What is this? Noah was slightly stunned. The water in front of Noah also kept bubbling, and it became more and more intense. At this time, Noah's expression began to stiffen, and his face also broke out in a cold sweat. Voila! Just at the moment when Noah woke up, under the crazily bubbling water in front of him, two heads finally popped out. Looking at the figure that suddenly appeared in front of him, and the scene that was imprinted in his eyes, Noah was petrified. In front of Noah, Ivania and Nya, whose hair was tied up, were completely naked. Their pretty faces were flushed, and while they were gasping for fresh air, their eyes and faces gradually revealed an expression of shame and anger. The air froze. Still not stopping. Yeah. Wah. In the huge bathtub, Ivania's shameful screams and Nya's extremely shy screams sounded at the same time. By the way, the weird screams came from Orange Bar, who popped out of the water behind Ivania and Nya. What a pervert. Big pervert. Don't you have the most basic sense of shame as a human? In a luxurious room in the hotel, Ivania and Orange Bar, who were wearing maid uniforms again, glared at Noah, who was sitting on the sofa. Their faces were full of indignation, and spat out insults without offensive power or novelty, which made Noah's face was full of helplessness, and his face was full of bitterness. Julie and Nya were both changed faces, but they was not as indignant as Ivania and Orange. Julie's pretty face was slightly flushed. Clearly, even though she often slept naked next to Noah like Lilith, it didn't mean that this emotionless girl wasn't shy. After Nya came back from the bathroom, she used her hands to cover her body that couldn't be completely covered. Tears hung from the corners of her eyes, and her pretty face was completely red. From time to time, she would secretly peek at Noah, and the more she peeked, the redder her face became. Looking at Ivania and Orange Bar, who were angrily lecturing him, Noah could only raise his hands in surrender. Didn't I say that I didn't do it on purpose? Even if you didn't do it on purpose, it's a fact that you saw our bodies. Orange Bar, who wasn't good at dealing with this kind of thing between the opposite sex, kept blushing, and was even a little flustered. No matter what, you have to be careful. I'm starting to wonder if you did it on purpose. Ivania poked Noah's cheek and said, speaking of which, when we first entered the school and formed the temporary double-tripping blade, you saw my body naked in the dorm. You even occupied the right to sleep with my Julie, and became the official double-tripping blade, with a super beautiful girl like Lilith, and we slept together every night. That's too much. What? Orange Bar turned pale with fright and shouted at Noah. You're shameless. Wait. Noah widened his eyes and said to Ivania in shock. Forget about the first part, but the later part with Lilith doesn't seem to have anything to do with you, right? What do you mean it doesn't have anything to do with me? Ivania first stuck out his tongue, and then said in a serious tone. As a friend, I can't watch you go down a path of no return. Then I'm sorry, I still have some self-control in this aspect. Noah's mouth twitched, and he narrowed his eyes and looked at Ivania in annoyance. Speaking of which, on the night when we first entered the school in the dorm, if you didn't run out of the bathroom by yourself and didn't grab Julie, then I wouldn't have seen everything, right? Ivania was speechless. Noah looked at Julie, Orange Bar, and Nya separately, and his tone became even more annoyed. This time, it seems like you all sneaked into the big bathtub and became like that, right? This time, even Julie, Orange Bar, and Nya were speechless. Strictly speaking, they were taken advantage of and seen naked. It could only be said that Ivania, Julie, Orange Bar, and Nya deserved it. After all, not only did the four of them sneak into the bathtub, but after hearing Noah's voice, They actually foolishly chose to hide in the water. As a result, the four of them were seen naked by Noah, and Ivania and Ya's breasts were played with. At that time, if the four of them made a slight noise, Noah would still be outside the bathtub and wouldn't have gone in, and the rest wouldn't have happened. Of course, it couldn't be said that Noah wasn't wrong. No, it should be said that Noah was also at fault. After all, Noah had a sensing ability that was almost like a radar, able to scan everything within a very wide range. Although this sensing ability couldn't allow Noah to see everything clearly within the range of the sensing ability, it could almost detect the shapes and auras of all kinds of existences. For example, if there was a rock within the range of the sensing ability, the sensing ability would give Noah feedback of the rock's outline and information. Even if there was no way to see it, Noah would still know what it was. Another example was if a person appeared within Noah's sensing range, Noah would be able to detect the other party's aura, presence, and even location. This function was indeed like a radar scanning. Even if he couldn't know the specific appearance, he could roughly know the other party's location and outline, and determine what the existence was. Therefore, if Noah could activate his sensing ability when he saw the bubbles, and detect the auras of the group of girls, he could have avoided everything on the spot. However, regarding the sensing ability, not to mention the fact that the girls didn't know about it, even if they knew, they couldn't blame Noah. Therefore, it was indeed a self-inflicted wound. No matter what, you're the one who's taking advantage of me. Ivanli could only use the girl's unreasonable manner. You have to forget everything that happened in the bathtub. After being reminded by Ivanli, Noah reflexively recalled the beautiful scene he saw in the bathtub. Ivanli's slender and beautiful body, that was both familiar and unfamiliar. Julie's tender and fair body. Orange Bar was full of charm, with a curvaceous figure, as well as Ya's pair of perfect figures that no one could ignore. Then Noah discovered it. He had a good relationship with himself, and had always been more active around him. He had actually seen the bodies of Ivanli, Julie, Lilith, Orange Bar, and Ya. When he was young, he had also seen the bodies of Mira and Lisanna. In another world, he had also seen Muging's delicate body. Could it be that he had another kind of physique that was destined to see the bodies of the opposite sex that he had a good relationship with? Unfortunately, Elisha had a good relationship with him, and the Holy Son of Heaven had even revealed his admiration for him. These two girls, why hadn't he seen their bodies? At the same time that this thought appeared in his mind, Noah didn't know what he was feeling right now. Regret? Speechlessness? Or was it both? Chapter 264. Even at night, the hotel was still brightly lit. However, this brightly lit situation did not occur on the top floors of the hotel. This was because on one of the floors, the shattered feather that was going to appear in tomorrow's auction was placed there. Da-da-da-da. In the dimly lit floor, every corridor was filled with the echoes of footsteps. Those were the footsteps of the surpassers, who were wearing the special guard uniform of the Mausoleum Guardians of the Dawn Organization's Wayan unit, patrolling the area. In the dim corridors that looked like giant beasts, almost every corridor was patrolled by the Guardians of the Dawn Organization. After graduating from the academy, all of them were rank 3 surpassers. Moreover, there would definitely be rank 4 surpassers. However, rank 4 surpassers were different from rank 3 surpassers. The combat strength of a level 4 warrior, who had unlocked the true power of Blaze, was not something a level 3 warrior could compare to. Therefore, among the Tomb Guardians who were at least rank 3 surpassers, rank 4 surpassers were usually dispatched as team leaders, and would not participate in the patrols. In a dark corner of a dimly lit corridor, Noah's back was against the wall. He tilted his head and calmly observed the patrolling teams. His deep black pupils slightly flickered. At this time, Noah was wearing a deep black shirt and trousers. On the outside, he was also wearing a black hooded jacket. The hood of the jacket was pulled up and placed on his head, covering everything above his nose. He perfectly blended in with the surrounding darkness. It was believed that even if Ivanli, Julie, Lilith, and other girls who were very familiar with Noah were here, they would not be able to recognize Noah. Not to mention, the group of girls were not here, they were at the ball. In order to avoid spending time with the group of girls, Noah purposely chose this time when the ball was about to start. He found an excuse to escape the ball at night and sneak into the upper floor of the hotel. Because he still needed to take care of the tomb guardians, Ivanli, Julie, Tachibana, and you were all in the ballroom. Hyuj and Oki were also the same. After successfully escaping, Noah changed into a set of clothes that would allow him to easily hide his identity and sneak into the upper floor of the hotel. The security here was extremely tight. In addition to the tomb guardians who were wearing police uniforms and patrolling the corridors, Noah could also occasionally rely on his sensing ability to detect some hidden defensive systems in the corridors that could not be seen with the naked eye. For example, pinhole surveillance cameras. Another example was the red lines that could only be seen by Noah's sensing ability. Infrared rays? Noah closed his eyes as he sensed the corridors. He sneered in his heart. Unfortunately, this will make it easier for me to find them. Noah did not doubt that the Dawn organization had the ability to install infrared rays in a hotel. However, it was impossible for the Dawn organization to fill every place with infrared rays. Otherwise, there would be no need for patrols. Therefore, the infrared rays played the role of a road sign. After all, the infrared rays must be placed on the correct path to the broken feather. Then, the words of the two patrolling tomb guardians confirmed Noah's guess. It's really boring. Why are we assigned to patrol the periphery? There's nothing we can do about it. Who told us to not be strong enough? Look at those rank 4 seniors. They can be on guard inside the infrared rays. And they only need to guard one place. They don't need to be like us, going around in circles. Yeah, it would be great if we could be promoted to rank 4, become a captain, give orders, and don't even need to patrol and guard. It's not that easy. Rank 4 has a lot of mental requirements, but the physical requirements are relatively small. I don't even know how to train my mental strength. That's right. Noah, who was hiding in the corner, easily heard these words. He looked at the direction where the infrared rays were more concentrated. This is just the periphery. The closer to the infrared rays, the closer to the broken feather. However, the closer I get to the location of the shattered feather, the tighter the security will be, and the tomb guardians there will definitely be stronger as well. There might even be level 4 or level V. Even if I can rely on my sensing ability to avoid the infrared rays, I still have to be careful not to be discovered. Immediately, Noah sneaked into the darkness, and when the patrolling tomb guardians turned the corner, his figure suddenly flew out. Whoosh! Like a ghostly shadow, Noah instantly flashed into the dim corridor. As if he had a pair of eyes in the sky, he nimbly twisted his body a few times, avoiding the infrared rays one by one, and swept into the infrared rays. The whole process took less than a second. The patrolling tomb guardians didn't notice at all. In this way, Noah specially drilled into the places with infrared rays. While turning a blind eye to all the infrared rays, he also paid attention to the pinhole cameras hidden in places that others could not see. As Noah moved forward, the infrared rays became more and more concentrated, the patrolling personnel also increased, and the security became more and more strict, that a burst of rhythmic footsteps came. One by one, the tomb guardians with stern eyes patrolled back and forth in the corridor. With his sensing ability, Noah easily judged the strength of these tomb guardians from their aura. Although they are still rank 3, these are the elites of rank 3. The rank 3 patrolling the periphery is much weaker than them. Noah thought. This also proves that I'm getting closer and closer to the world fragment. With his sensing ability, no one's position could be hidden from Noah. Therefore, Noah was able to accurately choose a clever place to hide and easily avoid the sight of the patrolling tomb guardians. Soon, Noah came to a corner. Looking through the wall, Noah could clearly see what was in front of him. At the end of the corridor, there was a door. On both sides of the door, 2 tomb guardians stood there like guards, not moving at all. It's there. Noah's eyes lit up while hiding in the corner. The world fragment must be there. But, how do I get there? Noah was distressed. Those 2 tomb protectors are guarding the entrance. How can I sneak in? Don't tell me that I have to resort to violence. This was also an option. He didn't need to kill the tomb guardians guarding the world fragment. As long as he stunned them, or shot them with his revolver, it would be fine. In any case, if the blaze didn't have killing intent, it wouldn't cause any physical harm. It would only cause a mental and spiritual impact. So Noah didn't need to be afraid. With this thought in mind, Noah deliberately suppressed the light and flames of the star pattern that appeared when the blaze materialized his revolver. This technique of eliminating the phenomenon caused by the materialization of blaze was something that Noah had figured out while he was secretly training his limit ability, so that he wouldn't be like the last time when he was facing the Tsukini hair, where he couldn't unseal the power of limit in time at the critical moment. Originally, this technique was useless, but who knew that it would come in handy at this time? After playing with the gun for a while, Noah raised the revolver in his hand and used his jacket to cover the body of the gun in his hand. Bang bang. Ugh. Ah. After the 2 gunshots were muffled by the jackets, 2 muffled sounds could be heard. Bang. In the sound of the 2 tomb guardians falling to the ground, one after the other, they were paralyzed on the ground. It was likely that they wouldn't wake up for at least 1 or 2 hours. Almost at the same time, Noah walked out of the corner, and in a flash, he arrived at the door. Pa! With a light sound, the door opened and closed and Noah entered the door. Chapter 265. This was an extremely spacious room. It was like a research facility. The ground was made of stone bricks that were as cold as steel. The walls were the same. Even the ground seemed to have electric wiring. From time to time, flashes of lightning would appear, giving people the illusion that they had entered a research facility. Noah activated his sensing ability and scanned the room. He found that there were no pinhole cameras or infrared rays. There were only glass cabinets with items placed in them. The glass cabinets were filled with valuable items that were worth collecting. Those were the items that were prepared to be gifted to the celebrities who came to participate in the appreciation convention. It would be too much to say that every item here was priceless, but it was not something that could be casually bought from a roadside stall. It was enough to enter the eyes of those celebrities. Therefore, if all the items here were to be sold, then it would definitely be enough for a normal person to spend the rest of their life lavishly. It was believed that in this country, only the Dawn organization, which was equivalent to the country's underground organization, had the ability to spend such a large amount of money and extravagantly give away the items here. Unfortunately, Noah did not even look at these items that could be considered valuable, but as if his mind was enlightened, he raised his eyes and looked at the front. In the innermost part of the spacious room, there was a copper platform placed alone. On top of the copper platform, there was a square glass cabinet the size of a soccer ball placed on top of it. Inside the football-sized cube glass cabinet, a crystal ball lay quietly inside. Inside, there was a feather that seemed to have been cut off at the root. With only half of it remaining, the feather released a weak white light. Ding! Just as Noah raised his eyes and looked at the world fragment, the white light on the world fragment skyrocketed, as if it had sensed Noah's arrival. At the same time, it released a dazzling white light, and at the same time, it trembled and made a light crisp sound. Just like those feathers in the world fragment, the white light of the world fragment was filled with emotions that only Noah could feel. Joy. Feeling the emotions of the world fragment, Noah's calm heart also surged with a trace of excitement. For Noah, who was extremely adept at controlling his emotions, other than the world and the world fragment, there were very few factors that could so easily stir up his emotions. However, this was not a bad thing. Although he didn't know why, Noah only needed to know that these emotions came from the bottom of his heart, and that was enough. After suppressing the excitement in his heart, Noah took a deep breath and lifted his foot. Just as Noah was about to step forward and collect the world fragment, a gust of wind suddenly sounded. A long whip-like shadow cut through the darkness of the vast room, slicing through the atmosphere. Against the howling wind, it viciously whipped towards Noah's direction. However, before the sound of the wind could be heard, Noah's sensing ability had already been triggered. The moment he stopped in his tracks, His figure was like a shadow as he retreated rapidly. Pung! The whip-like shadow heavily fell on the position where Noah was a second ago. With a muffled sound, it directly smashed the ground there. When Noah, who had retreated rapidly, saw the true face of the whip shadow, his eyes hidden under the hood congealed. Ka. The cold blades that were connected together, like the scales of a snake, drew an arc in the air. Amidst a series of mechanical sounds, they combined together one after another, and returned to the hands of the owner, who held the hilt. That was a snake belly sword. The owner holding the snake belly sword was naturally Moonlit Glass Rabbit, who was wearing a mixture of a maid's uniform and a bunny girl's uniform. She wore rabbit ears on her head and had a sadistic smile on her face. I didn't think that there would be someone who could sneak into this place without alerting the tomb guardians. Standing on a counter and looking down at Noah, Eugene too laughed out loud. His laughter was extremely wild. Hey, who are you? Noah didn't speak. He buried his face in the hood of the jacket he was wearing. With the cover of the surrounding darkness and the hood, he hid his true identity. Noah knew that in the place closest to the world fragment, the Dawn organization shouldn't really only arrange 2 guards at the door. There must be other precautions inside. However, Noah didn't expect that this precaution was actually Moonlit Glass Rabbit. Keep silent. Seeing Noah standing in the same place without making a sound and not running away because he was discovered, Moonlit Glass Rabbit raised her eyebrows and the corner of her mouth hooked up in an interesting arc. Well, it doesn't matter. After I take you down, I'll see enough for myself. After saying that, Moonlit Glass Rabbit's figure turned into a stream of light, holding the snake belly sword in her hand. Before she arrived in front of Noah, the snake belly sword in her hand blew up the air and heavily chopped towards Noah. With this chop, wherever the snake belly sword passed, the air seemed to be directly shattered and annihilated. The snake belly sword carried a huge amount of pressure and mercilessly fell towards Noah's body. Looking at the snake belly sword, that suddenly chopped towards him, as if it didn't want to take him down, but rather kill him, and the arrogant smile on Moonlit Glass Rabbit's face, Noah completely calmed down. Moonlit Glass Rabbit was a level V level surpasser. With the power of Moonlit Glass Rabbit's snake belly sword, a normal level 4. Even if it was a level 4, without 4 or 5 people attacking together, it was impossible for them to be Moonlit Glass Rabbit's opponent. However, Noah had already defeated Moonlit Glass Rabbit once, when he was a level 1. Although he relied on the power of Annihilation Strike and Leap to win against Moonlit Glass Rabbit's carelessness, Noah was no longer the level 1 from before. Without releasing the power of Limit, Noah was a level 4 level surpasser. Now, even if it was a direct confrontation, Noah was not afraid of Moonlit Glass Rabbit at all. However, it was not to the point of fighting Moonlit Glass Rabbit empty-handed. If he wanted to defeat Moonlit Glass Rabbit cleanly, he either had to release the power of Limit or use the blaze. If he used the revolver, Noah's deliberately hidden identity would be exposed. Therefore, if he didn't want to expose his identity and wanted to retrieve the world fragment, the wisest thing to do was to release the power of Limit. If Moonlit Glass Rabbit directly issued an alarm and called all the tomb protectors in the hotel over, Noah would definitely do so. However, when Noah used his sensing ability to scan the surroundings and found that Moonlit Glass Rabbit had no intention of calling anyone, Noah's mind suddenly became active. He wanted to test his own power. He wanted to test the power of his other blaze. Driven by this thought, Noah stretched out his hand and pressed it on his chest. When the bright star pattern appeared on Noah's chest, Moonlit Glass Rabbit's pupils suddenly shrank. Blaze! Amidst the heavy call, a pale blue flame burst out from Noah's body. In the next moment, within the blue flame, a completely black sword with white patterns on the sword fell into Noah's hand. Knight's Sword. At the moment of imminent peril, the Knight's Sword and the Snake Belly Sword were raised and slashed, each containing a ferocious force as they collided together. Clang! The sound of steel colliding with steel rang out. A burst of violent shockwaves swept out, blowing in all directions. Noah, who was holding the knight's sword, and Moonlit Glass Rabbit, who was holding the snake belly sword, were both pushed back by the force of the collision. Both of their feet fiercely stomped on the ground, and with a ding-ding sound, both of them were pushed back. After putting some distance between them, the two of them forcibly stopped their bodies at the same time, and came to a standstill. Facing each other from a distance, Noah, whose face was covered by a hoodie, had a calm expression on his face. Moonlit Glass Rabbit, on the other hand, tightened his grip on the snake belly sword. The arrogant smile on his face disappeared as he stared at Noah with a gloomy expression. "Who are you?" Chapter 266. Who are you? Yu Jianli Rabbit, who no longer had her usual arrogance, gripped the snake belly sword tightly with a gloomy face. When she realized that the intruder, whose face was hidden under the hood, raised the knight's sword in his hand and pointed it at her without any intention of answering her question, Yu Jianli Rabbit's face turned even uglier. "When did a traitor like you appear in the Dawn organization?" "Yes, a traitor." Now, Noah was undoubtedly betraying the Dawn organization, because only a surpasser could use the blaze, and only the Dawn organization could create a surpasser. As the result of the Dawn organization's research, now a surpasser, who hid his identity and a rank 4 surpasser, stood opposite her and tried to make a move on the Dawn organization's things. It was easy to imagine how bad Yu Jianli Rabbit's mood was. However, Yu Jianli Rabbit was also very confused. A rank 4 surpasser, who could release the true power of the blaze, betrayed her. She and the Dawn organization did not receive any news at all, which proved that the other party was still hiding in the Dawn organization. However, whether it was in the academy or in the organization, Yu Jianli Rabbit had never heard of anyone's blaze being the knight's sword in front of her. What was going on here? Yu Jianli Rabbit would never have thought that the intruder in front of her was the one who had defeated her, and was her student Noah. Noah's blaze had long been recognized as a revolver. Therefore, using the knight's sword, this blaze would not only not expose Noah's identity, it would also create a better concealment effect. As for the possibility of someone having two blaze, that was a thought that no one would have. Blaze was a materialized soul, and a person's soul only had one. If that was the case, how could they turn into two completely different blaze fangs? Therefore, no one would suspect Noah. This made Noah's mouth, which was only exposed outside of the hood, curl up, and he raised the knight's sword high above his head. Bang! The knight's sword, that was held high above Noah's head, suddenly burst into a ball of blue flame, burning fiercely. Then Noah called out that name. He called out the name of the true power hidden in the knight's sword. Blaze. Wanton plunder. Black Tea King. The blazing flames on the blade of the knight's sword suddenly stagnated. With a curl, the flames retracted into the blade of the knight's sword. Everything returned to normal. However, not only did Yu Jianli not laugh and mock her opponent like before, she became vigilant instead. The opponent had already unleashed the true power of blaze. After unleashing the power, there were no abnormalities, so anyone would become vigilant. And the moment this vigilance appeared in Yu Jianli's heart, as if Noah didn't want Yu Jianli to react, he turned his body, turned into a shadow, and flashed towards Yu Jianli like a ghost. Almost at the same time, Yu Jianli focused and waved the snake belly sword in her hand without hesitation. It brought with it a sharp and oppressive wind as it fiercely chopped down. Ding! The snake belly sword, that was as heavy as a mountain, cut through the air, and the knight's sword, that had strangely appeared in front of her with a ferocious force. It suddenly collided with the knight's sword, that was also ruthlessly chopping down at her, causing the space to explode with a light and crisp sound. The sound was light, but the attack was the most violent kind. Around the knight's sword and the snake belly sword that had collided, ripples of energy quickly spread out, causing the atmosphere to be disturbed. Ding 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 ding. Immediately, the ripples of energy continuously reverberated, and at the center of the energy ripples, a series of crisp collision sounds rang out one after another. That was the sound of the knight's sword and the snake belly sword crazily chopping at each other. Staring at Yu Jianli Rabbit, who had an unusually heavy expression in front of him, Noah's feet stomped on the ground, as if he wanted to stomp on it. Amidst the stomping sounds, he constantly closed in on Eugenely Rabbit. The knight's sword, in his hand, was like a gust of wind, as it continuously chopped down. Ding 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 ding. Eugenely, who was still wary of Noah, had no choice but to passively block the heavy snake belly sword. She blocked Noah's slashes one by one, causing the snake belly sword to ignite circles of sparks. Holding the knight's sword with both hands, Noah waved his hand, and the knight's sword in his hand directly cut through the air, furiously chopping down towards Eugenely Rabbit's head. This attack didn't have the slightest bit of fancy. It only had a surging and terrifying power. And under the pressure of this power, all the air within half a meter of the knight's sword was compressed and escaped in all directions, causing a vacuum to form when the knight's sword was swung down. TCH. Looking at the knight's sword, that was rapidly enlarging in her eyes, Eugenely Rabbit held the snake belly sword tightly, and immediately, fiercely swung the sword at Noah across the air. Dong! With a swing of the sword, the space in front of Eugenely Rabbit actually shook as if it had exploded, making a muffled sound. Immediately after, this heavy blow immediately turned into an invisible impact, and with a sharp sound that resounded throughout the vast room, it violently shot out and collided with the knight's sword in Noah's hand. Bang! The knight's sword suddenly collided with the invisible impact when it was half a meter away from Eugenely Rabbit's head. The force transmitted from the sword shook the body of the sword, causing the knight's sword to become sluggish. However, in this situation, Noah didn't retreat, but instead advanced. His body turned into a black line, and he took advantage of the situation to enter Eugenely Rabbit's side, and his right hand suddenly clenched. Oh! With an extremely strong force rapidly condensing on Noah's fist, Noah's body twisted, and his fist was like a cannonball, rubbing against the air, and in the heavy sound of the wind, it directly smashed towards Eugenely Rabbit's chest. Eugenely Rabbit was shocked. There was no way for her not to be shocked. Eugenely Rabbit, who had been on guard against the true power of the blaze that Noah released earlier, put all of her attention on Noah's knight's sword. How could she have thought that Noah would suddenly swing his fist at her like this? Feeling the strong wind coming from the opponent's fist, Eugenely Rabbit only had time to raise the snake belly sword in her hand and block in front of her body before the cannonball-like fist came crashing down. Bang! The fist that carried the terrifying force smashed onto the ferocious snake belly sword. Dong! An astonishing force turned into an impact, and like a tide, it rapidly surged out, and through the snake belly sword in Eugenely Rabbit's hand, it exploded like a bomb on Eugenely Rabbit's snake belly sword. Ha! Eugenely Rabbit, who had firmly endured the force from the snake belly sword with her body, let out a muffled groan. A hint of ruthlessness flashed through her eyes, and with a shout, she actually also raised a fist and heavily smashed onto her own snake belly sword. Bang! This time, it was Eugenely Rabbit's turn to turn the force from her fist into an impact. It contracted on the snake belly sword, and immediately after, it suddenly bulged and burst out in an earth-shattering manner. And the one who bore the brunt of it, naturally, was Noah, who was still holding his fist against the snake belly sword. Pa! Along with the explosive force from the other end of the snake belly sword, it attached itself to Noah's arm like a poisonous snake. A strange slapping sound came from Noah's arm, and he was directly shaken off by this force. After retreating a few steps, that force was finally removed. Who? Seeing Noah being shaken off, Eugenely Rabbit's gaze turned ruthless, and she raised the snake belly sword high above her head. Bite him to death, crazy snake who? As she spoke, a scorching blue flame suddenly ignited from the snake belly sword in Eugenely Rabbit's hand. Finally, Eugenely Rabbit had also released the true power of her blaze. Seeing that Eugenely Rabbit had begun to release the true power of her blaze, Noah's eyes flashed, and the corners of his mouth slowly curled up. Chapter 267. Pung! The body of the snake belly sword that was raised above Eugenely's head suddenly exploded, turning into sharp blades. With a spin, it soared into the sky like a twisting poisonous snake, forming a ring and rapidly spinning. The air slightly vibrated. A sword ring with a diameter of more than 3 meters let out a sharp buzzing sound and crazily spun. The true power of the blaze burned on the sword ring, causing the crazily spinning sword ring to turn into a dark blue halo that emitted an aura of death. That was a halo that was truly linked to death. As long as one was slightly grazed by this dark blue halo called the wild snake ring, it would definitely result in one's flesh being torn apart. Eugenli Rabbit raised the snake belly sword that only had the sword hilt left. The wild snake ring, floating above her head, spun while shaking the atmosphere, creating a gust of wind that blew up Eugenli Rabbit's bangs, causing Eugenli Rabbit's cold eyes to be exposed in the air. I originally wanted to capture you alive, but your abilities are not small. Don't blame me for using my full strength, but don't die too quickly, intruder. After saying that, Eugenli Rabbit did not even give Noah a chance to reply. The snake belly sword that was raised above her head suddenly swung down and swung down. Go for me, wild snake ring. Rubbing against the atmosphere and letting out a sharp buzzing sound, the dark blue sword ring immediately fell from the sky. It cut through the air, cutting through the wind, and mixed with the blazing blue flames. Like a meteor, it pulled a long tail of light and violently shot in the direction of Noah. Looking at the dark blue sword ring that was slicing towards him at an extremely fast speed, Noah suddenly raised his head, and his eyes shone brightly. Pung! In the midst of an explosion, the knight's sword in Noah's hand once again burned with blue flames. Like a ray of light, it rapidly expanded. Let's go too, Black Tea King. As soon as he finished speaking, Noah tightened his body and raised the blazing knight's sword in his hand. His body shot out like a meteor. Instead of retreating, he charged forward to meet the crazy blue sword ring. Buzz! The blue sword ring that represented death was still spinning, rubbing against the atmosphere and emitting a sharp buzzing sound. As the dark blue sword ring approached, the surrounding airflow was also disrupted. Under the friction of the dark blue sword ring, it seemed to have transformed into numerous invisible blades that flew in all directions. Facing the blue sword ring that gradually enlarged in Noah's eyes and released an astonishing momentum, Noah only made a single movement. Stab! The knight's sword, which was burning with blue flames in front of him, seemed to have turned into a ray of blue light. Like a bolt of lightning, it violently pierced through the air. With a sound of breaking through the air, it ruthlessly pierced through the rotating mad snake ring. When the knight's sword and the mad snake ring came into contact, the entire space became silent. Bang! Immediately after, the blue flames on the knight's sword and the mad snake ring sword, exploding in all directions. The blue flames brought along strong gales and shockwaves. In a short instant, they attacked the entire spacious room, wreaking havoc like a storm. Kacha kacha! The floor that seemed to be made of steel cracked inch by inch, like a spider web. Kacha kacha! Around the vast room, the glass cabinets that protected the precious collections also cracked under the gust of wind and waves. Eugenli Rabbit, who was holding the hilt of the snake belly sword, used one hand to block in front of her. Her eyes stared at the center of the sea of flames in front of her. Her eyes were first filled with shock, then slowly turned into fear. Buzz 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 buzz! The dark blue sword ring spun madly, trying to cut all the obstacles in front of it in half. Chirp chirp chirp. However, the tip of the knight's sword that was burning with blue flames was firmly pressed against the surface of the blue sword blade ring. It was constantly colliding and rubbing against the blue sword blade ring that was madly rotating and cutting, causing violent sparks to fly. Of course, what shocked Eugenli Rabbit was not that her mad snake ring was blocked, but that the mad snake ring was changing. She saw that the crazily spinning dark blue sword ring was slowing down bit by bit. Even the blue flames that covered it were slowly dimming. Looking closely, the blue flames that covered the dark blue sword ring were surging at a terrifying speed. They all flowed out and surged into the knight's sword, that was also burning with blue flames, and were absorbed by the blue flames on the knight's sword. Not long after, the blue flames on the spinning mad snake ring completely disappeared. Even the mad snake ring stopped spinning and stopped in midair. On the contrary, the knight's sword in Noah's hand was burning even more fiercely. It was like a sea of fire, suddenly burning. "Youth, what did you do?" Yu Jianli Rabbit's face was full of shock as she looked at the knight's sword that was burning with blue flames in Noah's hand. In her mind, the words that Noah shouted when he released Blaze flashed. Wanton plunder. Could it be that the true power hidden in the invader's blaze was the ability to plunder the power of other people's blaze? As if he could see through the thoughts of the shocked Yu Jianli Rabbit, Noah tightened his grip on the knight's sword that was burning with blue flames. Feeling the power that was stored in the knight's sword, his heart was slightly excited. Noah's knight's sword could not plunder the power of other people's blaze, but could plunder any of the opponent's abilities. As long as the knight's sword, that released the true power of blaze, came into contact with it, Noah could plunder any of the opponent's abilities as he wished. At this very moment, Noah had stolen the ability of Moonlit Glass Rabbit's Mad Serpent Ring. This caused Moonlit Glass Rabbit's Mad Serpent Ring to be destroyed without any attack, and his own blaze had greatly increased in power. Now, Noah could use the power of Yu Jianli Rabbit's Mad Snake Ring at any time. This was the true power of the knight's sword's blaze, Black Tea King. However, although the Black Tea King's power seemed very strong, it actually had its limitations. Moreover, there were 3 limitations. 1. There was only ever one ability that could be plundered. If he wanted to plunder another ability, then he would have to give up on the ability he had just plundered. Otherwise, he would not be able to plunder again. 2. Only abilities could be plundered. For example, Mad Snake Ring, Magician, and even Noah's Crushing Magic. These could all be plundered. But those without abilities could not be plundered. For example, Noah could not plunder the opponent's life, nor could he plunder the opponent's physical strength, arm strength, endurance, or even recovery ability. 3. The ability to be plundered could only be plundered by direct contact with the knight's sword. Moreover, the Black Tea King had to be released first. If it was not released, and there was no direct contact, then Noah would not be able to plunder the ability. It was also because of this that Noah released the Black Tea King at the beginning and waited for Yu Jianli Rabbit to use the Mad Snake Ring before plundering. However, as long as the plundering was successful, then the opponent would lose this ability. As long as Noah did not take the initiative to give it up, then this ability would belong to Noah. This was definitely a fatal blow to the opponent. Therefore, even if the Black Tea King had 2 limitations, Noah was still very satisfied with this ability. As for Yu Jianli Rabbit, after discovering that he could not use the Mad Snake Ring again, his gaze towards Noah became uncertain. Yu Jianli Rabbit had never heard of being able to plunder other people's blaze. What should he do next? Bang! At this moment, the tightly shut door was violently knocked open. A group of about 20 to 30 tomb guardians rushed in from the outside. When they saw the black-clothed man who was confronting Yu Jianli Rabbit with a blazing knight's sword in his hand, they were all shocked. One of the leading tomb protectors hurriedly yelled, "Quick! Catch him!" The group of tomb guardians reacted, raised the weapons in their hands, and rushed towards Noah's direction. Chapter 268. Catch him! Under the command of the leading tomb protector, the other tomb protectors behind him all placed their hands on their chests, and at the same time, a dazzling star rune appeared. At the same time, they also conjured their unique blaze fangs. Immediately after, the group of tomb protectors held their blaze fangs and rushed towards Noah's direction. Wait! Seeing the tomb protectors being so reckless, Yu Jianli too quickly called out. However, it was already too late to say anything. For a surpasser, a distance of 10 to 20 meters could be covered in the blink of an eye. Not to mention, as long as one could become a tomb protector, they were all at least rank 3 surpassers. With the speed of a rank 3 surpasser, when Yu Jianli too called out, they were already not far behind Noah. Turning his head, looking at the group of tomb protectors rushing towards him, Noah instantly activated his sensing ability and thoroughly investigated the strength of these tomb protectors. Other than the rank 4 surpasser, who was standing at the door and giving orders to the tomb protectors, The rest of the tomb protectors were all rank 3 surpassers. Presumably, the other party must have been attracted by the commotion caused by Noah snatching the wild snake ring, right? Against a group of rank 3 surpassers, there were more than 20 to 30 of them. Even with his rank 4 surpassers, Noah would still need a long time to defeat all of them. Moreover, there was still a rank 4 surpasser in Yu Jianli too, who were eyeing him covetously. Being surrounded by such a group of people, it was not difficult to escape unscathed. However, if he wanted to escape unscathed and obtain the world fragment, it would be a bit difficult, under the condition that the power of limit was not released. Bang! Just as the group of rank 3 tomb protectors were about to submerge Noah's figure, a terrifying surge of energy erupted from Noah's body like a violent storm. Magic power. After being strengthened by the Daybreak Star Rune 4 times, Noah's spirit had been strengthened, and his magic power had increased substantially. After a few months, the magic power that Noah had sealed under his limited ability finally flowed through Noah's body once again. After a few months, Noah had finally released all the power that had been limited within his body, erupting with his true strength. Dong! The magic power that had turned into a gust of wind seemed to have materialized, and it fiercely crashed into the charging tomb guardians. 20 to 30 charging tomb protectors were directly swept away by the magic shockwave, and they all cried out in pain as they were sent flying back even faster than when they came, or smashed against the wall, or smashed against the glass cabinets, or smashed against the ground. There were even 2 that crashed into the rank 4 captain and rolled out of the room like a gourd. Yu Jianli Rabbit was also caught off guard and was blown back repeatedly by the magic power that had turned into a storm. While her face was full of disbelief, she shouted at Noah, "You bastard! You haven't shown your true strength all this time." Yu Jianli Rabbit's angry voice could not enter Noah's ears at all. Feeling the vast magic power flowing through his body, and the full power that he had not felt for a long time, Noah's eyes that were hidden under his hood could not help but squint in satisfaction. Noah could clearly feel it. Under the Daybreak Star Rune S4 strengthening, and the limit ability's automatic growth, his strength had increased substantially compared to a few months ago when he had just arrived in this world. Especially in the aspect of magic power. Noah's magic power was originally unbelievably strong. This time, because of the strengthening of the spirit, Noah's originally very frightening magic power had increased by several levels. If not for Noah's current magic power control that had reached the point of perfection, the greatly increased magic power would very likely have once again fallen into a state of uncontrollable control. There were not many opportunities for this kind of magic power to obtain such a huge increase. If not for the growth of the spirit that indirectly led to the increase of magic power, Noah's magic power would not have been able to increase by so much. In the future, if Noah wanted to obtain the same opportunity again, it would not be so easy. However, with this level of magic power, Noah's crush power had definitely increased by another level. Perhaps in terms of the power of crush, even Gildas could not compare to Noah. Damn it! On the other side, Yu Jianli Rabbit, who was facing the magic power storm from Noah's body, had an angry expression on her face. She fiercely pulled the snake belly sword in her hand. Whoosh! The snake belly sword, that extended like a whip and combined like a snake's scales, under Yu Jianli Rabbit's control, streaked across the air, and in the midst of the whistling sound of the wind, it fiercely whipped towards Noah. Pung! The fierce snake belly sword whip heavily fell on the ground, causing the ground there to explode, causing the stones to fly wildly, attacking in all directions. However, Noah, who should have been standing there, had disappeared. Yu Jianli Rabbit's eyes widened in shock. Then she quickly looked around. After a while, she fixed her eyes on a platform. A copper platform. On that copper platform, placed there was a square glass cabinet's door that shook. It was opened. And it was opened without Yu Jianli Rabbit's knowledge. And naturally, the broken feathers that should have been quietly lying inside, wrapped in a crystal ball like crystal, had disappeared without a trace. Staring at the empty glass cabinet, Yu Jianli Rabbit was speechless for a long time. Around one by one, The tomb protectors stood up from the ground with difficulty, and together with the other tomb protectors, they followed Eugenie Rabbit and looked at the empty glass cabinet. A commotion gradually emerged in the entire room, and even in the entire floor of the hotel. In a luxurious room in the hotel. Whoosh! Outside the open window, a figure suddenly flashed from outside the window with a gust of wind, and with a sweep, swept into the room. He took off his dark coat, shirt and trousers, rolled them into a ball, and threw them on the bed. Noah immediately took the tuxedo from the wardrobe and changed into it as quickly as possible. After 1 or 2 minutes, Noah, who had changed into the tuxedo, grabbed the dark coat, shirt and trousers that were rolled into a ball in his hand, lifted them up, and the magic in his body instantly surged through his palm, covering them. The next moment the crushing magic quietly launched. Pa! The dark coat, shirt and trousers that were rolled into a ball burst into a ball of cloth with a soft sound, and under the drive of Noah's magic, it was as if they were swept up by the wind, and flew out of the window, floating into the distance. Only then did Noah clap his hands in satisfaction. He activated his limit ability and resealed his own strength. Only when he was left with the equivalent of a level 4 surpasser did he stop, allowing his strength to once again enter a state of automatic growth. Until then, a burst of chaotic footsteps sounded outside the door. Bang! The door of the room was heavily pushed open. Ivanli, Julie, Tachaba, Enya in maid uniforms, and Totoro Kurosaki in a suit, appeared at the door one after another. Some of their faces were full of anxiety, while others were full of seriousness. Immediately, Ivanli hurriedly said such a sentence to Noah. Not good. Noah. The shattered feather was stolen. Hearing this, Noah's face pretended to be stunned, but there was a trace of a smile in his eyes. 5 minutes later, Noah arrived at the top floor of the hotel. However, this time, Noah did not sneak in as an intruder, nor did he come alone. Instead, he openly took the elevator to this floor with Ivanli, Julie, Tachaba, Totoro Kurosaki and Totoro Kurosaki. Under the guidance of the 2 tomb protectors, Noah and the others came to the spacious room where the shattered feather was originally placed. Here, almost all of the tomb protectors that were still in the hotel were gathered. Even 99 lunar knights, Lilith, and Tsukijeri Rabbit were present. Chapter 269. An oppressive silence pervaded the entire spacious room. There were over 100 tomb protectors lined up on both sides of the vast room, standing in front of the cracked glass cabinets. A step in front of these tomb protectors, there were 4 or 5 rank 4 tomb protector captains, standing there with their heads lowered, not saying a word. In front of the platform where the shattered feather was placed, 99 lunar knights, Lilith, Sakini Bunny, and even 3 kingdoms and Sarah were all present. They all silently looked at the empty glass cabinets without saying a word, until Noah brought Ivanli, Julie, Tachaba, Kyujituryu, and Kawaito Kasaki in. Many people began to look at the door. Noah. Lilith, who was still wearing her formal dress, called out to Noah. Noah nodded to Lilith, and then looked at 99 lunar knights. 99 lunar knights didn't say anything, but expressionlessly waved her hand. Immediately after, Sakini Bunny, with an unhappy expression, began to talk about how the shattered feather was lost. From the moment Eugenie Rabbit discovered that the tomb protector at the entrance had been defeated, to the moment she discovered that the intruder was a surpasser and fought with the intruder. In the end, she put away her unhappy expression and solemnly recounted how her mad snake ring was stolen by the intruder. A blaze that can steal the power of other people's blaze. Everyone present looked at each other in dismay. Not to mention others, even 99 lunar knights, showed a trace of surprise and frowned. Impossible, there really is such a special power. There is no way I don't know about the existence of such a person. 99 lunar knights was the highest person in charge of the Dawn organization. Although the number of surpassers trained by the academy and the Dawn organization wasn't small, every surpasser was very precious, let alone a rank 4 surpasser. 99 lunar knights would definitely have these people under their control. And as the highest person in charge of the Dawn organization, 99 lunar nights held the lifeline of all surpassers, the Dawn Star Rune. If a surpasser wanted to ascend and increase their rank, they must first obtain 99 lunar nights' approval to give the surpasser the Dawn Star Rune to ascend. Therefore, 99 lunar nights was aware of all the level 3 transcendents who obtained the sublimation instrument to ascend to level 4. 99 lunar nights was also aware of the true strength of the blaze Fong of the transcendents who successfully ascended to level 4. He knew it like the back of his hand. If a surpasser successfully ascended to rank 4, 99 lunar nights would know. And it was even more impossible not to know the true power of the surpasser's blaze. Since the intruder who took away Shattered Feather was a level 4 surpasser, even if he betrayed them, being able to successfully rise to level 4 meant that the intruder had gone through the ascension ritual. Since the surpasser had undergone the ascension ritual, the surpasser's blaze's true power would have been recorded. However, 99 lunar nights didn't know of any rank 4 blazing fangs that could steal the power of other people's blazing fangs. Therefore, 99 lunar nights' first reaction to Moonsight Glass Rabbit's words was disbelief, but his second reaction was to ponder. A blaze that could steal the power of other people's blaze? Since he could even plunder the power hidden in other people's souls, such a special soul. If he were to find him and train him, would it be possible for this person to reach the level of absolute duo? This thought was unstoppable in 99 lunar nights' mind, and it made 99 lunar nights' eyes shine brighter and brighter. He secretly made up his mind to find the surpasser. As for the fact that the surpasser betrayed the Dawn organization and stole the Shattered Feather, 99 lunar nights did not care at all. As long as he could become an absolute duo, 99 lunar nights did not care about anything. Even 99 lunar nights don't know about rank 4? That means the surpasser did not undergo the ascension ritual in the Dawn organization, right? Lilith, who did not know what 99 lunar nights was thinking, frowned. Is it possible that the surpasser stole the Dawn Star Rune? Unfortunately, there is no such possibility. 3 Kingdoms indifferently replied. The Dawn Star Rune in the Dawn organization is controlled with the strictest methods. If it was lost, we would be the first to know. We did not receive any news that the Dawn Star Rune was lost. Moonsight Glass Rabbit shrugged, his face full of displeasure. Otherwise, it would not be so annoying. After saying this, the scene fell into an oppressive silence. 99 lunar nights, Lilith, Moonsight Glass Rabbit, and the others all muttered to themselves, clearly still considering all kinds of possibilities. On the other hand, Ivanli Julie, Tachaba, Yuju Aturyu Kawai Tokasaki, and the others were silent. They didn't know much about the Dawn organization, so they couldn't say anything at this time, let alone give their opinions. Noah, on the other hand, was happy that everyone had reached a dead end. He did not say anything, and also kept his mouth shut. He only vaguely glanced at Moonsight Glass Rabbit, whose face was full of displeasure, and laughed in his heart. In the battle with Moonsight Glass Rabbit, Noah only wanted to test the power of the Black Tea King. After all, even if Noah knew the effects of the Black Tea King before, he did not know the effects of the Black Tea King before he used it. Fortunately, Noah only wanted to test the Black Tea King, and Moonsight Glass Rabbit was not a real enemy. Otherwise, Moonsight Glass Rabbit would probably fly into a rage. Because if the Moonlight Glass Rabbit was a true enemy, Noah wouldn't have given up the Mad Snake ring that the Black Tea King plundered, and let it return to the Moonlight Glass Rabbit's body. After thinking for a long time, Lilith could only bitterly smile and look at her tripping double blade. Noah, what do you think? Me. What can I think? All possibilities have been rejected by you, right? Noah spread out his hands. According to what you said, unless the intruder isn't a surpasser, and doesn't need the Daybreak Star pattern to evolve, but is able to use the blaze, and is in existence similar to a surpasser, then this doubt can be resolved, right? Noah's words were completely perfunctory, and he wanted to confuse them. However, after hearing Noah's words, 99 lunar nights, Lilith, the 3 Kingdoms, and Moonsight Glass Rabbit were all stunned. Another kind of existence similar to a surpasso? For a moment, 99 lunar nights, Lilith, and the others looked in Julie's direction, and then looked away. Julie's delicate body trembled slightly, and her face was still expressionless, but her pair of deep red eyes began to evade, and became very uncertain. At the scene, only Noah, who had the perception ability, noticed the change in 99 lunar nights, Lilith and Julie. This made Noah slightly stunned, and he was a little surprised. Could it be that the reason he casually said actually had such a possibility? Another kind of existence similar to a surpasser? Is there really such an existence? Without waiting for Noah to think of anything, 99 lunar nights seemed to have thought it through, and she raised her head and said to everyone, "No matter what, the shattered feather has been lost, and what we need to do is continue to track down the thief. In addition, we need to cancel tomorrow's appreciation meeting." Everyone present looked at each other and could only helplessly nod. There was no other way. This appreciation meeting was originally held for the sake of the shattered feather. Now that the shattered feather was missing, the appreciation meeting naturally could not be held, and Noah and the others' mission could be considered a failure. Suddenly, outside the door, a voice that was neither fast nor slow suddenly sounded. Even with such tight security, the shattered feather was still stolen. It seems that the ability of a surpasser has slightly disappointed me. As these words rang out, two figures slowly walked in from the outside and appeared at the entrance, entering the sight of all the people present who were looking over as if they were about to shoot off. Chapter 270. Da-da-da-da. This was the sound of a walking stick hitting the ground, mixed with the sound of footsteps. Under the gazes of over 100 people that filled the spacious room, Edward and Kay walked in step by step with a fake smile on their faces. Looking at Edward and Kay, who gradually walked into the room, many people revealed a blank expression. Who is that? Only 99 lunar nights, Lilith, Moonlit Glass Rabbit, and the Three Kingdoms group focused their gazes on Edward and Kay, who were slowly walking in, their eyes gradually fluctuating. Noah also narrowed his eyes, feeling the unfriendly atmosphere in the air, and curled his lips into a smile. Kay, who was one step behind Edward, raised his eyes and swept his gaze toward Noah. As for Kay's gaze, Noah directly ignored it, causing Kay's eyes to flash with a cold light. "We meet again," blazed Diabolica. In front of everyone, Edward leaned on his walking stick, looked around and said, "It seems that something very troublesome has happened here. Do you need me to provide you with some help?" It's rare for Equipment Smith to be so enthusiastic. 99 lunar nights pursed her lips and smiled. "However, this is a small matter, we can take care of it ourselves. There's no need for you to worry." "Is that so?" Edward shook his head regretfully. "If you need, I can send God's Destroyer to help at any time. Having Surpasser and God's Destroyer work together seems to be a very interesting thing." As he said that, Edward revealed a strange smile. "How about having my God's Destroyer team and Tomb Protectors move out together? Just relying on the Surpasser power seems to be insufficient, no?" Although Edward's words were not mocking, they were still full of provocation. However, because of the theft of Shattered Feather, even though the surrounding Tomb Protectors were somewhat angry, they could not refute and could only glare at Edward. Noah, Ivan and Julie, who didn't know Edward and didn't know what to do, subconsciously gathered around Noah and looked at him for help. Yet on the other hand, hid behind Orange Bar, as if she was a little afraid. This caused Orange Bar to retreat a little, allowing Ye to distance herself from the center of the vile atmosphere. Noah glanced at 99 lunar nights, and then at Edward, recalling Lilith's words. Edward used to be the second in command of the Dawn Organization's Development Bureau. However, Edward's theory couldn't get the approval of the people around him, causing him to betray the Dawn Organization. Then, to the person in charge of the Daybreak Organization, 99 lunar nights, Edward was definitely an enemy and not a friend. He was definitely not someone she could get along with. However, what Edward said next wasn't in line with this judgment. "How is it?" Edward asked eagerly. "How about having the Surpasser and the God Destroyer cooperate?" 99th lunar night looked at the beaming Edward and said after a long while, "Master Technician, why are you so insistent on having the Surpasser and the God Destroyer cooperate? Isn't that good?" Edward chuckled. My original purpose was to cooperate with you, which wasn't it? Cooperate? The surrounding tomb protectors were all stunned. Lilith, Eugenely Rabbit, and the others were also stunned. Even Ivanli, Julie, Tachibana. And you were surprised. Only Noah, who had a conversation with Edward before, understood the meaning of Edward's words. No, it wasn't just Noah. 99th Lunar Night also understood. It's really surprising. After a moment of silence, 99th Lunar Night spoke softly. I didn't expect that someone would propose the idea of the 7 luminaries working together. Interesting, isn't it? Edward smiled. Don't you think that my steel armor and your daybreak star rune are very suitable partners? Without giving 99th Lunar Night time to answer, Edward spoke enthusiastically. Originally, surpassers are existences that surpass humans. They possess great strength that ordinary people cannot possess. If such surpassers were to wear steel armor, or implant daybreak star patterns into God Destroyer, who have undergone rigorous training, and combine the strength of surpassers and God Destroyer, what kind of level would that be? Everyone can imagine. Unknowingly, Edward was no longer speaking to the 99th Lunar Night, but to the tomb guardians around him. Whether it's the surpasser or the God Destroyer, they both have powerful strength. If the two are combined, that new strength will reach a terrifying level. With the power of the surpasser and the God Destroyer, your power will surpass all other life forms. With the power of the surpasser and the God Destroyer, you can annihilate everything. With the power of surpasser and God Destroyer, even if it's a god, you can still dominate. At that time, the real God Destroyer troop will be completed. Don't tell me you're not tempted. In the spacious room, facing the excited old man who made such a declaration, the group of tomb guardians looked at each other in dismay. Surpass God? Is that why it's called the God Destroyer? How powerful will it be? Unimaginable. It's really unimaginable. Will the combination of the surpasser and the God Destroyer really work? The tomb guardians, who had strict military order, and would never discuss without order in this kind of situation, were moved by Edward's theory. They forgot about order and started to quarrel. Seeing this situation, Lilith, Eugenely Bunny, and the others had a troubled expression on their faces. 99th Lunar Night was silent. Ivan and Julie couldn't help but reach out and grab Noah's clothes. Their faces showed uneasiness. You trembled and hid behind Orange Bar. Even Orange Bar was frowning, not knowing what to do. Evidently, the group of young ladies were also caught off guard by this situation. After all, this wasn't something they could come into contact with right now. Noah reached out his hand and gently patted the back of Ivan and Julia's hands that were on the corner of his shirt, comforting the two girls. Looking at Edward's happy expression and the hidden pride in his eyes, Noah's eyes turned cold. At first, Noah planned to stand by and watch, but since even Ivan and Julie were affected by Edward, if he didn't strike a blow at this dreamy old man, Noah wouldn't be Noah. I say, Mr. Equipment Smith. Noah said indifferently, are you really one of the 7 luminaries? Oh, do you know about the 7 luminaries? Edward was stunned for a moment, then he smiled. Why do you ask? Because isn't the 7 luminaries the title of the sages with the goal of absolute duo ? Noah shrugged. But no matter how you look at it, your ideas and inventions are only in pursuit of power on the surface. It doesn't match the absolute duo that exerts the power of the soul to the extreme, right? Edward's smile disappeared, but Noah didn't let him go just like that. Deviating from the absolute theme, you have already failed in your duty. The title of 7 luminaries is no longer suitable for you. You should give it up. In front of Edward, Noah said this with a calm face. Otherwise, I'm afraid you'll be like before and be forced away by people who don't agree with you. This before naturally referred to when Edward was still in the Dawn organization and left the Dawn organization because he wasn't recognized. That kind of thing, it doesn't matter. Being poked at his scar, Edward's face finally turned ugly, but he quickly recovered. If no one agrees, then it's up to me to make others agree. As soon as he said this, Kay, who was standing behind Edward, raised his head and suddenly raised his hand. Bang! In the next second, An explosion sounded throughout the entire hotel building, causing the entire building to tremble. Chapter 271. Boom! The instant the thunderous explosion rang out, not only did the entire hotel tremble, but there were also clear sounds of chaos and panic coming from below the hotel. What's going on? Explosion! It's an explosion! Did someone plant a bomb in the hotel? The mausoleum guards who were lined up around them were also alarmed. Shuyi, Lilith, Moonlit Glass Bunny, and Three Kingdoms immediately protected 99 Shuyi in the middle when the explosion sounded. Little Ba, yeah, who was farther away, let out a frightened voice and hugged Orange Bar, who was gritting his teeth, and fell into a panic. On the contrary, although Ivan and Julie's reaction was slower than Lilith, Moonlit Glass Bunny and Three Kingdoms, they were still much faster than the Tomb Guardians. They almost calmed down after panicking for a while. However, Ivan and Julie only had time to calm down. In front, Noah suddenly turned around and hugged Ivan and Julie, then rushed to the side. Before Orange Bar, Enya could react, he suddenly hugged all four girls into his arms and dodged, hiding behind a glass counter. Seeing Noah's action, Moonlit Glass Bunny and Three Kingdoms were startled, but Lilith, who had cultivated a tacit understanding with Noah and knew Noah very well, had a look of surprise in her beautiful green eyes. Without hesitation, she also hugged Shuyi and Sarah and rushed behind a glass counter. In the next second, Moonlit Glass Bunny and Three Kingdoms saw it. Outside the surrounding windows, black shadows descended from the sky and floated in the air outside the windows, and pitch-black weapons were set up. Submachine guns. Da-da-da-da-da. The sound of continuous fire from the submachine guns and the sparks on the muzzles worked together. Bang, 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 bang. The glass of the window that was penetrated by the crazy bullets shattered. Immediately after, the bullets turned into a barrage like a storm, continuously sweeping in from all directions outside the windows, mercilessly shooting towards the people in the room. Yu Jianli Rabbit and the Three Kingdoms finally realized what was going on at the critical moment. At the same time, they rolled on the ground and hid behind the glass counter. Bang, 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 bang. The bullets landed on the glass counters one by one, shattering the glass on top of them. Suddenly, the glass shards flew around, and some of the collections that were originally placed in the counter were shot through by the bullets and fell to the ground with a crackling sound. Quick! Find something to hide behind. Hide! On the other hand, some of the tomb protectors were shot because they couldn't react in time, while some were lucky enough to escape. They quickly picked up the wounded closest to them, and under the orders of the 4 or 5 rank 4 captains, they hid behind cover. If it weren't for the protection of these 4 or 5 rank 4 captains, the number of tomb protectors would have definitely increased by now. After all, even though he could more or less see the trajectory of the bullet when he reached level 3, he could only successfully dodge the bullet when he reached level 4. Under the situation where the bullets were fired from all directions, only the 4 or 5 rank 4 captains had the ability to deal with it. They also showed good battlefield discipline and took care of the tomb protectors in time, allowing the tomb protectors to escape. Among them, Yuju Atuyu and Oki Hokusaki were lucky enough to react in time and hid behind a counter, avoiding the fate of being hit by the bullets. However, although there were no deaths so far, there were quite a number of people who were injured. In addition to the sound of submachine gun fire, glass shards, and the shattering of collectibles, the entire vast room was filled with the screams of many people. Aha! Behind the glass counter, Ya buried her head in Noah's arms and kept screaming in fear. Not to mention Ya, except for Julie, Ivanli and Tachibana, also showed a hint of fear on their faces, and subconsciously grabbed Noah's clothes tightly. Before today, whether it was Ivanli, Tachibana, or Ya, they were all students who were not even 18 years old. Even if Howling Academy taught combat skills, after graduation, they would join the Dawn organization and become tomb protectors. They would have to fight against all kinds of villains in order to crack down on crimes. It was inevitable that they would encounter such a dangerous battlefield, but that was a matter for the future. Now it had only been a few months since they entered Howling Academy. Even if they were used to fighting, the group of girls was not used to the battlefield yet. Not to mention, now was a critical moment where they could lose their lives at any time. So it was inevitable that they would panic. Julie, on the other hand, was still calm from beginning to end. She even poked her head out from Noah's arms, and her deep red eyes vigilantly scanned the entire room. After a while, except for the Timidya, Ivanli and Tachibana, finally displayed the excellent combat skills they had trained in the academy. They suppressed the panic in their hearts and forced themselves to calm down. At this time, the shooting of the submachine gun also stopped. Outside the surrounding windows, God's destroyers wearing steel armor flew into the room with the help of the thrusters equipped on the back of their combat suits. They slowly landed and surrounded the room with their submachine guns. Leaning on his walking stick, Edward, who was the only one who was not in the range of the submachine gun's bullets, laughed with regret and sarcasm. Even if the surpassers have the power to surpass humans, they are still just a group of people who graduated from a school full of impurities. Can they really not be compared to soldiers who were born purely for the sake of battle? Go! Kay, who was standing behind Edward, ordered coldly. Capture the 99th lunar night, and the eldest daughter of the Bristol family. Hearing this, the people hiding behind the counters understood what was going on. From the beginning, Edward had planned to capture the highest-ranking person in charge of the Dawn organization, and the daughter of the investor's president if the negotiation failed, and then use them to achieve his goal. However, because Noah poked at his sore spot, Edward did not wait for the 99th lunar night's reply, and launched an attack in anger out of humiliation. Lilith, who handed the 99th lunar night to Eugenie Bunny and the Three Kingdoms to protect, tore a hole in the hem of her dress, revealing her white thighs. While making it easier for her to move, she looked in the direction of Noah. Noah also handed the terrified Ya to Tachibana, raised his hand, and signaled Ivanli and Julie not to make a sound. After exchanging glances with Lilith, he shrugged with a calm expression and nodded. Lilith suddenly smiled sweetly, and then stood up from behind the counter, exposing her figure to the eyes of all the God's destroyers. Don't move! The group of God's destroyers moved when they heard this, and all of them aimed the submachine guns in their hands at Lilith. They originally wanted to kill her directly, but when they realized that she was one of the targets they had to capture alive, they hurriedly stopped. Bang! At this moment, behind the counter opposite Lilith, who had exposed her body to the enemy's muzzle, a dull explosion and dazzling light erupted at the same time. The dull explosion and dazzling light caused the painful memories of the last defeat to surface in Kay's mind, causing him to recall the figure that could cause the explosion and dazzling light. His face was shocked. Not good. However, it was already too late to react at this time. Behind the counter that emitted a dull explosion and a dazzling light, a figure shot out like a meteor. There was a vortex-like brilliance under his feet. He streaked across the space and disappeared in a flash. When the meteor-like figure with the whirlpool-like brilliance under its feet appeared again, it was already in front of Edward. Edward turned pale with fright. Kay, who was standing behind Edward, narrowed his eyes to the size of a needle tip. Gotcha! Immediately after, the figure in front of Edward held up a revolver with rippling white lines and pressed it against Edward's forehead. Chapter 272. The entire place suddenly went silent. The group of God destroyers in steel armor finally reacted. Just as they were about to turn the direction of the submachine guns in their hands and aim at the figure that was holding the revolver against the shocked Edward, Kay's cold voice rang out. Don't move! The group of God destroyers' hands suddenly froze, and they did not dare to move even an inch. Seeing this situation, Lilith and Moonlit Glass Bunny, who were waiting for an opportunity behind the counter, clicked their tongues. If those God destroyers had turned the direction of the submachine guns in their hands and aimed at Noah, then Lilith, Moonlit Glass Bunny, and the others who were waiting behind the counter would have instantly launched a counterattack. Unfortunately, this plan was seen through by Kay. Now those God destroyers were still aiming their submachine guns at them, so Lilith, Moonlit Glass Bunny, and the others could not move. Therefore, the situation suddenly became a stalemate. "Save me!" Edward shouted angrily at Kay with a face full of panic. "Shut up!" Noah pressed the revolver against Edward's head heavily, causing Edward to shut his mouth in fear. However, his lips were still trembling, and the crutch in his hand fell to the ground. Noah then looked around. After exchanging glances with Lilith, he turned his head and looked at Kay. "Tell them to put down their guns." Hearing this, Kay, who had already distanced himself from Noah and Edward, was silent for a while, then laughed. "No, the person who should put down their guns is you." Noah raised his eyebrows. "I have to say, to be able to find an opportunity to counterattack in such a situation, you are indeed very outstanding. Compared to you, those tomb guardians who graduated before you are simply trash." Kay put on a disgusting, hypocritical attitude. "However, please don't forget that you have a hostage in your hands, and so do we." After saying this, Kay waved his hand slightly, and the surrounding god destroyers immediately raised their submachine guns and aimed at Lilith, who was the only one exposed outside the counter. Lilith's face fell. Noah also frowned. Only Kay had a victorious smile on his face as he shrugged. "For the sake of the eldest daughter of the Britos family, and for the sake of your classmates and companions, I'm sorry, but could you please put down the gun in your hand?" As he said this, Kay stared at Noah. His body tensed up to prevent Noah from suddenly exploding and creating more problems. After all, if he did not focus all of his attention on Noah, Kay was afraid that the next time he would be controlled by Noah, it would be his turn to be controlled by Noah. It couldn't be helped. Noah's great leap forward was simply too terrifying. With Noah's rank 4 strength using great leap forward, there was no one present who could keep up with Noah's speed. Even if they used their eyes to follow Noah's figure using great leap forward, it would be difficult. Therefore, the only thing Kay could do now was to stare at Noah. While preventing Noah from causing trouble, he also had to firmly control the hostage in his hands. Otherwise, this time, let alone Kay, even the entire God Destroyer team personally led by Edward would suffer defeat at the hands of this student, leaving behind a lifetime of humiliation. Unfortunately, Kay thought that his ability to grasp the situation was very good, but he underestimated Noah. Bang! Following the sound of a gunshot, Edward's leg was directly pierced through by a pitch-black bullet formed from mental strength, filled with killing intent. Blood splattered everywhere. "Aha!" Edward immediately screamed and knelt on the ground. What? With Lilith as the leader, the people hiding behind the counter, including Ivanli, Julie, Tachibana, and Yatongtong all sucked in a breath of cold air. You, the God Destroyer team with Kay as the leader, all stood up in shock and anger. "You're very smart, but don't treat others as fools." Noah smiled indifferently. The revolver in his hand was once again pressed against the head of the screaming Edward, who was kneeling on the ground. His eyes carried a bit of coldness as he looked at Kay. "So the smart you can guess. If I and these so-called God Destroyers shoot at the hostages in our hands at the same time, will both hostages die? Will both hostages survive? Or will one live and one die?" When Noah said this, not only Kay, but even Lilith understood what was going on. Lilith was a level 3 surpasser, and she could barely see the trajectory of the bullets. In this kind of situation, if the God Destroyers opened fire, Lilith might not be able to avoid all the bullets, even if she tried her best. However, she could still pay a small price in exchange for a chance to live. Compared to Lilith, Edward was just an ordinary person, and an old man at that. If both sides opened fire at the same time, in the end, Lilith could pay a small price in exchange for a chance to live. But Edward was definitely going to die. Kay's expression gradually darkened, but after a while, he regained his composure. "The celebrities downstairs are also under our control." And then, Noah looked at Kay with a smile that wasn't a smile. He looked at Kay with an even more composed expression. "Do you want to use the lives of those celebrities, who have nothing to do with me, to accompany the life of the technician who invented steel installation and gave you power?" After throwing out this sentence, Kay didn't say anything else. He looked at Noah, and the atmosphere slowly became oppressive. "You really aren't an easy person to deal with." After a while, Kay slightly raised his eyes and said coldly, "What will make you let them go?" Noah curled his lips and smiled. He didn't pay attention to Kay, but turned his head and looked at Lilith. Lilith immediately understood, and whispered to Moonlit Glass Rabbit and Three Kingdoms, "Take New Moon and leave this place." Moonlit Glass Rabbit immediately curled her lips in displeasure, as if she was very dissatisfied that she had to leave. Three Kingdoms didn't hesitate at all. He brought the silent 99 lunar nights from behind the counter and moved in the direction of the door. "What? You don't want to leave?" Moonlit Glass Rabbit also got up from behind the counter and shouted at the tomb protectors hiding behind the counter with a nasty tone. "Take the wounded. All of you leave. All of you leave." The few rank 4 captains clenched their teeth and gave the order for all the tomb protectors to come out from behind the counter. They followed behind 99 lunar nights, Moonlight Glass Rabbit, and the Three Kingdoms and left the place. "Noah, Ivanli, Julie, Tachibana, and you seem to want to stay." Even Yuju Aturyu and Koei Hokusaki stood up with a determined expression. "All of you leave. Don't leave a single one here." Noah threw out these words without turning his head. "Don't forget what this guy said. The celebrities downstairs are also being controlled. There must be other god destroyers there. I'll leave those people to you. You can't do anything here." The group of people hesitated. "Let's go." The one who said this was Julie, who had been staring at Noah's back. "Leave this place to Noah. Noah." Ivanli seemed to be struggling and hesitating. After a while, he clenched his teeth and nodded. "Let's go." "Noah," you muttered worriedly. "Be careful." Tachibana only said this solemnly. Instead, he took the lead, held Ya's hand, and ran towards the door. Ivanli and Julie glanced at Noah, then lowered their heads and followed Tachibana out of the room. "Sarah." At this moment, Lilith opened her mouth again. "You leave too, young mistress." Sarah was shocked. "Don't make me say it again." Lilith waved at Sarah, but her eyes were fixed on Noah. "My partner hasn't left. I can't leave, young mistress." Sarah's expression changed. Finally, she gave up and bowed to Lilith before leaving the scene. In the spacious room, other than Noah and Lilith, only Edward K. and a group of god destroyers were left. "Are you satisfied?" Kay's expression was somewhat gloomy. "Can I ask you to let him go?" Noah didn't answer. Instead, he violently pulled up Edward, who was still kneeling on the ground and holding his thigh, and pressed the revolver against his temple. Then, Noah's voice echoed in the air. "Rooftop." Chapter 273. Whoosh! The wind from the building whistled across the vast rooftop like a gust of wind, causing the temperature in the air to drop significantly. Bang! At a certain moment, the rooftop door was heavily opened. Noah pressed a revolver against Edward's temple and pressed down on the limping Edward as he walked in with Lilith. At the same time, a group of gods destroyers with submachine guns swarmed in from outside the door and surrounded Noah and Lilith in a semicircle. They were still holding the submachine guns in their hands, but none of them dared to open fire, causing the crowd to be filled with a thick atmosphere of hesitation. Kay was the last to arrive on the rooftop. The fake smile on his handsome face had long disappeared. Kay stared at Noah expressionlessly as he walked out of the crowd and came to the front of the God's Destroyer unit. However, Noah still didn't look at Kay, and his gaze fell on the center of the rooftop. There, a large military transport aircraft was parked in a designated circle. It was the transportation vehicle used to transport the God's Destroyer unit. The reason why the God's Destroyer unit would descend from the sky and arrive outside the window of the room where the important items were placed was because of this aircraft. Most likely, when Edward brought Kay to the 99th lunar night to discuss the matter of cooperation, this military transport aircraft openly flew over from the sky and landed on the rooftop of the hotel, allowing the God's Destroyer team inside to attack while waiting for Kay's instructions. "We were too careless," Lilith, who was next to Noah, said with a face full of unwillingness. "I should have known that the enemy would most likely attack from the sky." From the moment the appreciation convention was announced, Lilith had already guessed that today or tomorrow wouldn't be too peaceful. This guess was only confirmed when she heard it from Noah. After Edward arrived here, Lilith and the Dawn Organization's tomb guardians all increased their vigilance. Unfortunately, in the end, not only did Lilith not expect the shattered feather to be stolen by an insider, she also didn't expect the enemy to fly from the sky and launch an attack. In this regard, Noah shook his head. It's not just from the air. There must be some who came with Edward and Kay, but they snuck in. That was why there was a bomb planted in the hotel. That was why the infiltrators had immediately taken control of the celebrities in the hotel after detonating the bomb. They were probably planning to use those celebrities as hostages to force 99 Lunar Knights and Lilith to submit if the surprise attack didn't succeed. Come to think of it, after the matter was settled, Edward and Kay would probably force 99 Lunar Knights and Lilith to board the military transport aircraft and leave this place once again. After all, this was the territory of the Dawn Organization. If they didn't escape by air, it would have been very difficult for Edward and Kay to escape from this country, with so many members of the God's Destroyer squad. However, no matter how much they thought about it, Edward and Kay never expected that it would end up like this. The Dawn Organization was careless and allowed the God Destroyer team to arrive at the venue by air. The God Destroyer team was also careless and allowed Noah to control Edward. Noah raised the revolver in his hand. He didn't turn around, but the revolver suddenly pointed behind him. Bang! The pitch-black bullet pierced through the air, space, and darkness. Finally, it landed on the fuel tank of the military transport aircraft. Bang! The revolver bullet, which was more powerful than an anti-tank sniper rifle, directly blew up the fuel tank of the military transport aircraft and caused a huge explosion. Raging flames burned along with the explosion and enveloped the entire military transport aircraft, turning the military transport aircraft into a piece of charred iron in the scorching flames. The hot wind blew on the Kay and God Destroyer troop members. The light from the fire illuminated Kay's ugly face. Noah withdrew the revolver and pushed Edward, who was in his hand, away. Edward, who was caught off guard, fell to the ground with an injured leg. Two of the God Destroyer squad immediately stepped forward and escorted Edward, who was looking at Noah with a face full of resentment, into a protective circle. The moment Edward returned to the protection of the God Destroyer squad, a violent murderous aura emerged from each of the God Destroyer squad's bodies. Especially Kay, whose eyes became incomparably red. The murderous aura on his body was unprecedentedly strong. In the face of the large amount of murderous aura and killing intent that came from all directions, Noah's face remained calm as he twirled his spear and muttered to himself. Like this, you won't be able to escape, right? Without the military transport aircraft, if the Dawn Organization wanted to capture the God Destroyer squad, unless the God Destroyer squad had the ability to break out of the encirclement, it was unlikely that they would be able to leave the country. It was because of this that Noah came to the rooftop. Noah Dole. Kay, who understood his situation, roared angrily. I will definitely kill you. During the kidnapping of Lilith, because of Noah's existence, not only did the 10-man team of Kay and the God Destroyer squad fail, but it was also equivalent to Kay being spared by Noah. This was an old grudge. This time, the kidnapping of 99 Lunar Knights and Lilith, in an attempt to fulfill Edward's ambition, was still because of Noah's existence. Not only did the entire situation fall into a passive state, it became even more difficult to escape the country. This was a new grudge. With the addition of the new grudge and the old grudge, Kay's hatred for Noah finally couldn't help but explode. Pa! Suddenly, the suit on Kay's body suddenly bulged and exploded, exposing the clothes hidden under Kay's suit to the air. Looking at the clothes on Kay's body, Noah and Lilith were both astonished. It was a set of battle clothes. Needless to say, it was definitely a special equipment called steel equipment. However, it was different from the other God Destroyer squad. The steel equipment on Kay's body was no longer the cold appearance of the previous armor. Instead, it was like a black tight armor and a white combination armor that was light and portable. Kill. As Kay's cold voice slowly faded away, Noah could feel a pressure that was even more powerful than before, mixed with the killing intent that filled Kay's heart, slowly diffusing out from Kay's body. Under this oppressive feeling, Noah could clearly feel it. Kay was more than a level stronger than last time. No, not only that. On the back of Kay's steel equipment, that was different from the other God Destroyer squads, there were 4 wing-like armor that instantly spread out. The tips of the armor shot out a red light, transforming into 4 red blade-like wings that allowed Kay's body to float. In the next instant, Kay coldly smiled. His body suddenly moved, and the 4 red blade-like wings on his back immediately shot out a large amount of red light like a propeller, causing Kay to transform into a red shadow and violently rush out. That speed, even if it couldn't compare to Noah's leap, it wasn't too far off. Thus, with the support of that terrifying speed, Kay's body suddenly appeared in front of Noah like a ghost. The sudden appearance of Kay in front of him also caused Noah's pupils to slightly constrict. However, Noah, who possessed a godlike sensing ability, would not be so easily ambushed. Thus, at the same time that Kay appeared in front of him, the revolver in Noah's hand immediately moved. With a chi sound, the revolver cut through the air, and with a vigorous force viciously smashed down on Kay's head. The heavy body of the revolver fell, but Kay did not dodge. A cold light flashed through his eyes, and he expressionlessly waved his hand. Gotcha! Suddenly, a pair of wings on Kay's back suddenly rotated mechanically. It popped out from under Kay's armpit, and was grasped by Kay's hand. At this moment, the wing-like equipment shooting out a red light turned into a real weapon light blade. Clang! Immediately after, the light blade, that was composed of red light, like a laser lightsaber, forcibly collided with the body of the revolver that was smashing down, causing a crisp sound to ring out. The revolver and the light blade collided. Chi. Intense sparks burst out, illuminating Noah and Kay's faces. Chapter 274. Kay was indeed completely different from the last time. Not to mention the armored steel on his body, and the wings on his back that could transform into light blades. Just from the light blade that collided with the revolver, the oppressive power that was transmitted from the light blade was something that Kay definitely did not possess last time. This made Noah slightly wrinkle his eyebrows. Kay, who was in front of Noah, sneered. He extended his other hand, and the remaining 3 wings on his back once again sprung out like a machine with a gotcha sound, transforming into another light blade that was held in Kay's hand. Like a bolt of lightning, the light blade in Kay's hand directly pierced towards Noah's heart. Looking at the momentum and ferocious strength that caused the air to slightly heat up due to the friction, if he were to be pierced, there was no doubt that Noah's chest would be directly pierced through, and his heart would also shatter in order to announce his opponent's victory. With such a close-range attack, even Noah might not be able to dodge in time. Therefore, Noah did not choose to dodge. Instead, he reflexively raised his hand and heavily slapped towards the side of the light blade that was thrusting towards him. Pa! This was the sound of Noah's palm hitting the light blade. This was the sound of Noah's hand landing on the light blade. The light blade released a high temperature that burned Noah's palm until it emitted a light smoke. Immediately after, the light blade that was knocked askew by Noah's palm brushed past Noah's armpit and pierced towards the back. Feeling the high temperature of the light blade coming from his armpit, Noah's eyes flashed with a hint of sharpness, and the hand that was holding the gun fiercely shook. Dang! With the sound of steel colliding with steel, Kay was sent flying backwards. However, he relied on the propeller-like wings on his back to hover in midair and stopped above the rooftop. From Kay's surprise attack to Noah sending Kay flying, the entire process took less than 3 seconds. It wasn't until Kay was above the rooftop that Lilith finally reacted. She materialized her rifle and aimed it at Kay in midair. Her eyes were filled with shock. That Kay had actually become so strong? This was already far beyond the strength of a rank 3 surpasser, even surpassing a rank 4 surpasser. Only a rank V surpasser could have such strength. Ha 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 ha. Under the protection of a group of God Destroyers, Edward let out an excited and resentful laugh. Do you see that? This is the power of the new steel installation and death feathers. A new steel suit? Lilith couldn't help but look at the brand new battle suit on Kay's body. Death feathers? Noah, on the other hand, looked at the wing-like equipment on Kay's back that was emitting a large amount of red light. Our God Destroyer steel installation has been completely adjusted. It's no longer a half-finished product like last time. My steel installation is an exclusive steel installation that was specially made for me. It's not something a normal steel installation can compare to. Kay, who was hovering in midair, laughed sinisterly. In addition to the external equipment death feathers that was developed to complement the steel installation in battle, I'm already different from last time. Different? It was really different. After equipping the steel installation and death feathers that were specially made for him, with Kay's current strength, even the rank V moonlit glass hair might not be his opponent. Come, Noah Dole. Kay's face began to show madness. The second round is about to begin. Hearing this, Noah curled his lips and smiled. He looked around at the God Destroyer that was protecting Edward in front of him. About 30 people? After estimating the number of God Destroyer, Noah smiled at Lilith as if there was no one else around. 1-on-1 or 1 against 30, which side will you choose? Lilith was stunned at first, then she immediately laughed with a pfft sound. Wasn't this the same as the last time when they faced off against Kay and the God Destroyer team? However, at that time, it was 1-on-1 and 1 against 3. This time it was 1-on-1 and 1 against 30. Therefore, Lilith looked at Noah with a gentle gaze. Then which side will you choose? Of course, the side that's more annoying and troublesome. Noah shrugged and said, After all, you're my important partner, aren't you? The smile on Lilith's face became more and more beautiful. That's true. The conversation was the same as the last time. However, the feelings that outsiders could not detect were rolling in the hearts of Noah and Lilith. Then let the ball begin. Lilith raised the rifle in her hand with one hand and pointed it at the 30 God Destroyer in front of her. She had the same confident smile on her face as she declared, Before my partner returns, I'd like to ask you to dance a song with me. Noah slowly walked forward and looked at Kay, who had a gloomy expression. His voice echoed in the surroundings. Present a performance. Magician. The incantation to release the true power hidden in the soul echoed throughout the sky above the rooftop. Bang! The revolver in Noah's hand exploded and turned into pieces of black fragments. Like a whirlwind, they flew into the air, contracted, expanded, and circled back together. Not long after, 7 black rings in the shape of the crosshairs floated above Noah's head. Snap! Under the gaze of Kay, who suddenly narrowed his eyes, Noah gently snapped his fingers. Gotcha! The 7 black rings with horns that floated above Noah's head immediately disintegrated and reformed. After a rotation, they turned into a huge heavy cannon. Wung! Light appeared from the surrounding space. As if it was being absorbed, it shrunk into the muzzle of the heavy cannon. Kay's expression finally changed. Bang! At this moment, the light that gathered at the muzzle of the heavy cannon directly exploded and turned into a dark green beam of light. It shot out from the muzzle of the heavy cannon and directly pierced through the air as it rushed toward Kay. Ha-iya! Looking at the incoming beam of light, Kay roared and stretched out his hand. A pair of wings immediately popped out from the death feathers on his back. However, this time, the death feathers did not turn into a light blade but a laser gun. Following Kay's roar, the red light at the muzzle of the laser gun in his hand suddenly surged. A red beam of light that was almost the same as the beam of light shot out. It rubbed against the air like a meteor and fiercely collided with the beam of light that was shooting toward him. The 2 beams of light that contained extremely terrifying power collided with a loud bang. An ear-piercing explosion suddenly resounded in the sky like thunder, causing many of the God Destroyer soldiers' minds to go blank. Lilith, who had seized the opportunity, attacked them head-on. In the sky, flames suddenly appeared. Despicable! I didn't expect you to have the same power as the Death Feathers. Kay, who originally had victory in his grasp, was like a beast that was about to die. He roared while holding the 2 guns that were ejected from the Death Feathers. and madly fired at Noah below. Shio 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 shio. The bullets that were shot out from the death feathers guns were not normal bullets, but red light bullets. They were like small bombs that pierced through space and turned into red dots that shot toward Noah below. In response, Noah stood in the same spot without moving. Once again, he snapped his fingers with a snap sound. Kacha! The heavy cannon that was suspended above Noah's head broke down and reformed in a cracking sound. In a short moment, it turned into a black hole-like jet port. Bang! Immediately after, a scorching flame surged out from the magician, jet port, and turned into a beam of fire that enveloped all the light bullets that were attacking. Bang 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 bang. In a series of low explosive sounds, the light bullets that were enveloped by the beam of fire were all detonated in the flames. Rings of fire exploded and were completely annihilated. Whoosh! The impact of the shockwave was like a ripple that spread out from the rooftop. It was mixed with the wind and blew in all directions. The scorching flames illuminated the entire rooftop and the night sky, revealing the battle between the magician and the death feathers. Chapter 275. Die! Accompanied by Kay's angry yell, 3 bright red beams of light fell like meteors, bringing with them a whistling sound as they suddenly shot out. The 3 bright red beams of light were like 3 red lines. As they violently crossed each other, they just happened to completely cover all of Noah's escape routes. Clearly, Kay's control over external equipment like the death feather had already reached an extremely proficient level. That was also because he had painstakingly honed it in order to seek revenge on Noah. It was also because of this that Kay was so angry when he saw that Noah's magician had similar properties to the death feather. In order to defeat his opponent, he had painstakingly honed his death feather, all for the sake of revenge. In the end, he discovered that his opponent also had the same power. There was nothing more hateful than this. Unfortunately, Kay had overestimated his death feather and underestimated the magician. Although the death feather and the magician were similar existences, compared to the death feather, the magician's power was undoubtedly stronger. This was because not only could the death feather transform into a light blade or a laser gun, the magician could also transform into various other forms, possessing various properties and effects. Myriad of changes. This was a power that the death feather absolutely did not possess. Kacha! With a calm expression, Noah lightly waved his hand. The black hole-like ejector above his head immediately rotated and disintegrated, turning into 3 smaller ejectors. In the instant that the air around the ejector slightly vibrated, 3 blazing red beams of fire quickly condensed and formed. With a spiral, they suddenly shot out, fiercely colliding with the 3 incoming red beams of light under the night sky. Boom boom boom! The beams of light and fire collided. It was as if bright fireworks were blooming in the night sky. Amidst the sounds of explosions that made people's hearts violently shrink, sparks and flames filled the sky. It's not over yet. Kay, whose eyes were incomparably red, roared as he controlled the wings of death on his back. The boundless red light that surged out from the wings of death on his back suddenly fluctuated and quickly wriggled. A moment later, it actually condensed into a pillar-like light blade. However, Kay didn't grab hold of this huge light blade. Instead, he let it float in the air and slowly rotate until it floated above his head. The red light on the blade's surface condensed a terrifying amount of energy, causing the red light to expand greatly. Noah narrowed his eyes and finally moved. Da-da! With 2 clear sounds of hitting the ground, Noah abruptly leaped back and retreated a distance. In the process of retreating, Noah even stretched out his index and middle fingers and raised them toward the sky. Buzz! As Noah moved, the magician began to reassemble from the 3 black hole-like nozzles, forming a triangular black instrument. Phew! The sound of something breaking through the air rang out. One by one, the black triangular instruments flew out like streams of light, leaving behind streaks of starlight. Like a light pen, they carved out a precise geometric pattern in the air, causing the precise geometric pattern to blossom with a burst of bright light, as if it was a dazzling sun. Looking at the marvelous geometric pattern in front of Noah, and the dazzling light exploding from it, Kay's expression became very uncertain. Regarding the fact that after his equipment had been adjusted and made according to his own exclusive armor steel and wings of death, his strength had greatly increased, and he was unable to easily take down Noah, Kay felt incomparably angry. However, Kay couldn't help but admit that even if he didn't take into account the fact that he was a level 4 surpasser, Noah's combat experience, combat skills, and combat methods were truly endless. It was like a bottomless pit, making it impossible for others to see through his true strength. Therefore, no matter how angry Kay was in his heart, he constantly reminded himself that he had to be cautious. In order to deal with an opponent with endless methods, Kay could only think of one method. I have to end this quickly. As this thought flashed through his mind, Kay's eyes suddenly turned sharp, and a fierce shout filled with cold killing intent resounded. Go! As the shout fell, the gigantic blade of light floating above Kay's head trembled, and an extremely sharp sound of something breaking through the air suddenly rang out. One could only see the enormous light blade, madly spinning, and with a sharp cry, it violently swept out like a wheel of light. Phew! The enormous wheel of light's speed was so fast that it seemed to be able to pierce through the obstruction of space. In just a few flashes, the enormous wheel of light, which in the eyes of others could only see a flash of light in the air, appeared only a few meters away from Noah. It was just like Moonlight Glass Rabbit's Mad Snake Ring. But its power was even more powerful. It mercilessly cut towards Noah's direction. However, just as the enormous wheel of light was about to land on Noah's body, an intricate geometric pattern that seemed to be formed by light appeared in front of Noah's body. It immediately became like a shield, and with a spin, it stood in front of Noah for a long time. The enormous wheel of light ferociously shot over and fiercely collided with it. Boom! The terrifying sound of the collision was like a sudden clap of thunder, resounding through the air. Lilith and the God Destroyer, who were still fighting, were caught off guard and their ears buzzed. Even their vision became slightly blurry. Pung 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 pung. The enormous wheel of light relentlessly attacked the intricate geometric pattern that had turned into a light shield, causing waves of shockwaves to madly undulate. This caused the air to become distorted from the collision, and a series of sonic booms exploded, causing violent sparks to fly in all directions. Goo! The earth-shattering shockwaves spread out, causing Kay, who was relying on the power of feathers of death to float in the air, to be affected as well. He reflexively raised his hand and blocked in front of him. In the next moment, Kay's expression suddenly changed. Pung! Just as Kay's expression changed, a muffled explosion sounded out. Below him, a figure with a whirlpool of brilliance under his feet suddenly shot out from the center of the shockwaves and blazing sparks. Leap! Noah finally used the speed-boosting skill Leap Forward that had led to the decisive defeat of Kay in the previous battle. A dazzling brilliance formed from a whirlpool-like shockwave spread out under his feet. It was as if he was directly stepping on air. With a sudden kick, he swept into the air like a lightning bolt. You're courting death. Seeing that Noah actually dared to directly rush into the air, Kay immediately let out an angry laugh. With feathers of death, not only did he have the ability to fly, he also had abnormally strong mobility. It could be said that the sky had completely become Kay's domain. Noah rushing into the air like this was no different from courting death. However, in the next moment, the angry smile on Kay's face stiffened. Dong! Noah, who had rushed into the air, suddenly turned his body, and a whirlpool of brilliance appeared under his feet. It was as if he was really stepping on flat ground, and in the midst of the sonic boom, he fiercely stepped on the air, and suddenly flew in another direction. The principle of leap was the same as annihilation strike, using the shockwaves to accelerate one's movement. It was not impossible to think of it as a propeller installed on the soles of one's feet. Naturally, Noah could also use the technique of leap to create shockwaves, and use the momentum of the shockwaves to change direction in midair. That's right. It was as if he was stepping on air. Dong 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 dong. Amidst the sonic booms, Noah's feet, which were filled with a dazzling light due to the great leap forward technique, kept stomping on the air, causing Noah's figure to turn into a ray of light. He kept changing his direction, leaving behind afterimages, as if he was flying from all directions. While Kay was absent-minded for a moment, a dazzling brilliance suddenly appeared behind him. Feeling the strong wind coming from behind him, Kay's face showed a hint of shock. Immediately after, a fist that was similar to a whirlpool of resplendent light instantly arrived like a bolt of lightning and heavily landed on Kay's back. Pung! A muffled sound shook the night sky. Poochie! A mouthful of dark red blood violently spurted out from Kay's mouth, turning into a flower of blood that spread to the horizon. Chapter 276. Pung! Amidst the ear-piercing sound, Kay, who had spat out a mouthful of blood, fell from the night sky like a kite with its string cut. Like a piece of trash, he heavily smashed into a corner of the rooftop. Pung! The rooftop's floor cracked open from the impact. Gravel flew up like water splashing in all directions. Damn it! Feeling the intense pain coming from his back, Kay let out a furious roar. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and just as he was about to struggle up from the ground, a sharp sound of something breaking through the air reverberated through the air. Kay's heart trembled. He felt an intense sense of danger, but he only had enough time to flip over. Immediately after, a burst of light filled his vision. It was the same as the Death Feather's light blade. However, it didn't look like a blade, but more like a needle. It was a pitch-black light blade that extended from 4 pitch-black cylindrical handles, accompanied by the sound of the wind. 4 pitch-black lightsabers extended from the pitch-black cylindrical handles fell from the sky. Kay's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets as the lightsabers cut through the air and landed on his body. Chi-chi-chi-chi. Following the crisp tearing sounds, the 4 pitch-black light blades were like real giant needles. They mercilessly pierced through Kay's 4 limbs. While crimson blood spurted out, Kay's body was firmly nailed to the ground. Ah! The intense pain from his hands and feet made Kay cry out in pain. He once again spat out a mouthful of blood. The exclusive steel equipment worn by Kay was undoubtedly more suitable for Kay than the ordinary steel equipment, and its performance was also much better than the normal steel equipment. It gave Kay a physical strength that was comparable to a rank 4 surpasser. Its defense and hardness were also much higher than the average steel armor. Thus, although the power of Noah's annihilation strike was very strong, it was only used with the strength of a level 4 surpasser. It only caused some damage to Kay, but it didn't really make him lose his ability to fight. However, it was different for the light needles formed by the magicians. Kay, whose 4 limbs had been pierced, was unable to continue fighting even if he wasn't fatally wounded. Kay had originally wanted to end the battle quickly, but in the end, he was defeated by Noah even faster. Kay lifted his pale face with difficulty and looked up at the night sky. Over there, Noah, who had transformed the magician into an external equipment similar to the Death Feather, equipped it on his back like 4 pitch-black wings. He slowly descended from the sky and entered Kay's sight. His eyes and face were abnormally calm. This calmness deeply stimulated him. The magician, who had transformed into the Death Feather form, caused Kay to feel even more resentment in his heart. Only now did Kay realize that the sky was not his domain. Noah could also turn the magician into the Death Feather state at any time and fly in the sky. However, in order to catch him off guard, and also in order to defeat him, Noah chose to use the element of surprise and high speed. Leap forward, causing Kay to lose to this technique for the second time. Understanding this point, Kay roared with incomparable resentment. Noah Doloah! A roar full of resentment resounded throughout the sky above the rooftop. You piece of trash! Realizing that Kay had already been defeated, Edward's face was filled with fear as he crazily yelled out. Even with the steel installation and death feathers that I specially made for you, you can't win against a brat who hasn't even graduated yet. Trash! Trash! Just as Edward finished speaking, a laser beam suddenly pierced through the air and landed heavily in front of Edward. Bang! The ground in front of Edward was suddenly blasted open by the laser beam, leaving behind a charred hole that emitted light smoke. Shut up, Noah! who was floating in the air, glanced at Edward, a cold light flashing through his eyes. "You don't have the right to say that, you useless piece of trash. Strictly speaking, to be able to develop equipment like the steel installation, Edward could not be considered useless." However, when he was still in the Dawn organization, Edward knew that his concept of developing external skeletons was not in line with the absolute duo concept of developing soul power. However, not only did he not reflect on it, he even betrayed his original organization and continued to walk down this path that deviated from the main theme. This person simply did not deserve the title of Seven Luminaries, which was based on the absolute duo. Therefore, no matter how talented Edward was, on the path of the absolute duo, he was still useless. Edward fell to the ground with a paw sound, his face ashen. And with Edward's fall, coupled with the defeat of the strongest K, those God Destroyers suddenly lost their will to fight. Bang 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 bang. Lilith, who seized the opportunity, immediately pulled the trigger of her rifle, shooting down the God Destroyer one by one. By the way, before this, there were already 10 God Destroyer that fell under Lilith's rifle. The steel installation that had been completely adjusted could probably give these God Destroyer the strength of a level 3 surpasser. Lilith was also level 3. Relying on the uniqueness of the rifle, Lilith was able to defeat level 3 unscathed when she was level 1. Now, even if her opponents were 30 God Destroyers equivalent to level 3, Lilith was still not at a disadvantage. If this continued, it would only be a matter of time before all the God Destroyer here fell. Ha 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 ha. K, who was nailed to the ground by the pitch-black light needle, laughed wildly. His eyes were fixed on Noah's body as he growled. "Kill me." K had said the same thing last time. However, that time, Noah spared his life because of his relationship with Lilith. Now looking at K, who was laughing wildly, as if he had gone mad, and his eyes were lifeless, Noah knew. This person must have been living a life worse than death. Aware of this, Noah closed his eyes, and then suddenly opened them. "As you wish." After saying this, the death feather form of the magician immediately flew out a wing-like black floating cannon, and the muzzle of the cannon condensed a bright light. Whoosh! The emerald green laser cut through the air and landed on Kay's head. Poochie! With a soft tearing sound, the laser penetrated Kay's head. Kay's wild laughter came to an abrupt end. Fresh blood, with Kay's head as the center, spread in all directions. Wong! The pitch-black light sword that penetrated Kay's limbs dispersed with a vibrating sound. The 4 cylindrical handles also disintegrated into pitch-black fragments and floated into the air. Bang! The death feather form of the magician behind Noah exploded, and also disintegrated into pieces of pitch-black fragments, floating above Noah's head. Not long after, all the fragments of the magician burned together with blue flames, turning into little blue flames and gradually dissipating into the air. Without looking at Kay, who fell on the ground, Noah turned around and walked towards the rooftop entrance. There Lilith, whose dress was slightly damaged but not injured, welcomed Noah's arrival with a gentle smile that was rarely seen. Looking at the smile on Lilith's face, Noah was silent for a while, then sighed. "Sorry, my soul is still stained with blood red." Hearing this, Lilith smiled and shook her head. "But you also erased the darkness in other people's souls." Saying this, Lilith stepped forward and hugged Noah. "Thank you for your hard work, my partner." Listening to Lilith's soft voice as she buried her head in his arms, smelling the delicate fragrance from Lilith's body, and feeling Lilith's slender, soft and curvy body, Noah hesitated for a moment, then finally reached out and gently hugged Lilith. With her eyes closed, Lilith, who leaned her face in Noah's arms, slowly smiled. Because this was the first time Noah responded to Lilith's intimate actions. Chapter 277. The sky slowly lit up, allowing the sun to once again shine on the earth, bringing life back to the earth. At dawn in the hotel, many celebrities brought their subordinates and greeted the upper echelons of the Dawn organization, who were the hosts. Then they boarded a luxury car and left. It couldn't be helped. Although only one night had passed, Many of the rich and delicate celebrities were almost scared out of their wits during this night. Under the attack of the God Destroyer Squad. Other than the God Destroyer Squad, that was controlled by Edward, and the God Destroyer Squad, that was held hostage by Noah, there were about 30 God Destroyer Squad that had snuck into the hotel and planted bombs in the hotel. After the bombs exploded, they took control of the celebrities. Originally, these God Destroyer Squad only needed to take control of the celebrities. After they met up with the God Destroyer Squad led by Edward and Kay, their mission would be more than half complete. Unfortunately, these 30 God Destroyer Squad were quickly attacked by the Surpasser led by Moonlight Glass Rabbit. The God Destroyer Squad leader that was in charge of leading this God Destroyer Squad was also pinned down by Ivan and Julie. In the end, he was knocked down by Ninefold Totoro. Although the rest of the God Destroyer Squad had the strength of a Surpasser, the Tomb Protectors were also at least rank 3. There were even 4 or 5 rank 4 leaders, and the rank V Moonlight Glass Rabbit. They were completely no match for them, and were all knocked down. In the end, other than Kay, who died in battle, all of the God Destroyer Squad were captured alive and escorted out of the hotel under the escort of the Tomb Protectors. Edward, who had one of his legs pierced, seemed to have made a fuss. He put on a strong front and said that he had to be released. However, after the incident, 99th Lunar Night and Edward chatted for about 10 minutes in a room. It was unknown what 99th Lunar Night said to Edward, but when Edward appeared again, his face was completely ashen. He didn't say anything and was obediently taken away. This incident seemed to have come to an end. After all, even if the attackers were all arrested, the fact that the shattered feather had been stolen could not be changed. With the loss of the shattered feather and the shock of the crowd, there was naturally no way for the appreciation convention to continue. They could only announce the end of the convention. However, before the celebrities left, 99 Lunar Nights appeared before everyone and made the following solemn promise. This time, it's our Dawn organization's lack of hospitality that caused everyone to receive such a shock. We will give everyone a certain amount of compensation, and will continue to search for the whereabouts of the shattered feather. When the time comes, we will definitely give everyone a more perfect appreciation party. Thus, the Art Appreciation Conference came to an end. As for Noah, after retrieving the shattered feather, he had naturally completed his mission in this world. Just as Noah was thinking about how to say goodbye to the group of girls who had a good relationship with him, 99th Lunar Night personally came to him and solved his problem. Retrieve the shattered feather? With regards to 99th Lunar Night's words, Noah was completely stunned. Not to mention Noah. Apart from Ya, who was still in shock in the other room, Ivanley, Julie and Lilith were all stunned. Lilith was the first to react, looking at 99th Lunar Night with a serious gaze. Lunar Night, what's going on? I hope you can call me chairman in this kind of situation. 99th Lunar Night closed her eyes and said expressionlessly, I know you are very surprised, but the shattered feather must be retrieved. Not to mention that I have already announced as the highest person in charge of the Dawn organization that I will reopen the appreciation convention for the shattered feather. Even the intruder who stole the shattered feather must be arrested. Hearing 99th Lunar Night's words, Ivanley, Julie and Lilith looked at each other. Noah also frowned slightly. 99th Lunar Night's words actually had a deep meaning. Why was it that after the shattered feather was stolen, the 99th Lunar Night announced that they would recover the shattered feather in the future and reopen the appreciation fair? Was that necessary? Moreover, 99th Lunar Night said that she must arrest the intruder who stole the shattered feather. Was that really just because she wanted to arrest the intruder? I'm afraid not. What 99th Lunar Night really cared about was not the shattered feather, but the intruder who stole the shattered feather. There were 2 reasons. 1. Find out the intruder's true identity. The identity here did not refer to the name of the intruder, but whether or not the intruder was a surpasser. After all, the intruder this time could use the blaze, so it was very likely that the intruder was a surpasser. If the intruder was not a surpasser, then it would be fine. But if the intruder was a surpasser, Then how did the intruder hide the true power of the blaze from the Dawn organization? Or how did the intruder rise to rank 4, without anyone knowing? These questions must be investigated clearly. Otherwise, the Dawn organization's management mechanism might have some major problems that 99th Lunar Night did not discover, leading to a lot of loopholes. 2. Absolute Duo. 99th Lunar Night was definitely interested in the intruder's ability to steal the power of the blaze. In order to achieve her ultimate goal, the demonized 99th Lunar Night would not let go of any possibility. It was understandable that she would want to find the intruder, and even firmly control the intruder in her own hands. Of course, the first reason could be thought of by everyone present. As for the second reason, it was probably only Noah and Lilith, who understood 99th Lunar Night's true nature, could guess it. Lunar Night. Lilith wanted to say something, but Noah reached out his hand and stopped Lilith from speaking. Why me? Noah looked straight at 99th Lunar Night. Other than me, there should be a lot of high-level existences in the Dawn organization. Even the Wayan unit would be more suitable to hunt down the intruder who stole the shattered feather. Right? This was indeed the biggest question in Noah's heart. There was no reason for 99th Lunar Night to let Noah be solely responsible for hunting down the intruder who stole the shattered feather. Right? Whether or not the intruder's strength was really only rank 4, or whether or not Noah could capture him. Just based on the fact that Noah was only a student, there was no reason for him to be given the task of hunting down criminals. Moreover, he was alone. Hearing Noah's question, 99th Lunar Night's dark eyes slightly flickered. 99th Lunar Night naturally couldn't tell Noah that this was deliberately arranged by her. Originally, this appreciation convention was held to train Noah. However, after this incident, 99th Lunar Night found that Noah was more capable than she thought. Not everything could force him to a dead end and force out his inner potential. If this was the case, simply arranging a trial for him might not be able to test Noah's potential and let Noah increase his strength. Even if Noah stayed in the school, there might not be any way for him to increase his strength. Therefore, 99th Lunar Night decided to let Noah carry out the task of arresting the intruder who stole the shattered feather, as an excuse to let Noah go out to explore the outside world. She believed that the friction between two souls, with such special individuals, would definitely produce wonderful sparks. Unfortunately, what 99th Lunar Night didn't know was that Noah and the so-called intruder were the same person. Therefore, 99th Lunar Night pursed her lips and smiled, giving such an answer. I believe in your ability. As soon as these words came out, a stifling silence suddenly filled the entire room. Shoei, Lilith said directly, isn't this decision too rash and hasty? 99th Lunar Night didn't pay attention to Lilith and continued to look at Noah. Her dark eyes carried an expression that others couldn't understand as she stared at Noah. 99th Lunar Night's intuition told her Noah would definitely agree. Reality proved that 99th Lunar Night's intuition was right. After a while, Noah suddenly smiled. I understand. His voice clearly echoed throughout the room. I will accept this task. Chapter 278. Noah was about to carry out the mission of arresting the intruder who stole the broken feather. The duration of the mission was unknown. Moreover, it was to be carried out immediately. This news quickly spread throughout the Dawn organization's tomb protectors, who were still in the hotel. Regarding this decision, everyone expressed that they were very puzzled, and many people expressed their indignation. Such an important mission, and the danger was unknown, and the duration of the mission was unknown. Why would the Dawn organization give it to a student who was still in school and had not yet graduated? Even if the student had successfully ascended to rank 4 when only 1/3 of the first year was over, not to mention his excellent grades, his combat strength was also very outstanding. But there was no reason to give such a mission to him, right? After all, regardless of the level of combat strength, when carrying out a mission, there were many things that required experience. And this experience might not be able to be taught in the 3 years he was still in school. Now, a student who had only finished 1/3 of the first year, even if his strength was outstanding, how much experience could he learn in carrying out missions? In addition, he was carrying out the mission alone, which made countless people even more puzzled. It was said that because of this matter, several rank 4 tomb protectors captains directly protested in front of 99 lunar knights and strongly requested that the tomb protectors carry out the mission. Whether it was for Noah's safety or for the sake of the reputation of the tomb guardians, all the tomb guardians hoped that this mission could be handed over to them to carry out. However, no matter what anyone said, no matter how good the reason was, 99 lunar knights still insisted on letting Noah carry out this mission, causing the group of tomb protectors to be completely speechless. 99 lunar knights was the highest person in charge of the Dawn organization. Since 99 lunar knights had made an assertion, as a subordinate, what else could the tomb protectors say? This matter was decided just like that. It was still the holiday period. When Ivanli, Julie, Lilith, Tachaba, Kyuji Turyu, and Kawai Hozaki returned to the school, this matter should quickly spread in the school, making Noah's name temporarily the most frequently mentioned name in the school, right? As for this mission, Noah felt that it was just right. Noah had already retrieved the world fragment, and it was time to leave this world. Now, with this mission, Noah could leave the school openly and use it as an excuse to say goodbye to the girls and return to the world between worlds to continue his journey of collecting the world fragments. In any case, the intruder who stole the shattered feather was Noah himself. There was no reason for him to chase after himself, right? As for what he would do when he returned to this world, that was something he would have to consider in the future. The Dawn organization's team will leave the hotel in the afternoon. 99 lunar knights indicated that Noah didn't need to return to the academy and could leave at any time. In this regard, Noah was also happy to have less trouble. He decided on the spot to set off in the afternoon to carry out the so-called hunting mission. After knowing that Noah was about to leave for an unknown period of time, the group of girls all gathered in a room to talk. At this moment, although Julie still had an expressionless face, the ahog on her head drooped listlessly, showing the depression in her heart. For the time being, I can't sleep with Noah. Yeah. Lilith also felt a little uncomfortable and was very unhappy. Why are you in such a hurry to leave? Did the chairman really decide to let Noah carry out the hunting mission? Orange Bar, who wasn't present at the time, frowned. Isn't this decision a bit too much? As a result, Orange Bar could only use the word too much to describe 99 lunar knights' decision. After all, no matter what, Noah was still a first-year student. He hadn't learned much about missions and work, and it was really inappropriate to give him a mission. How about we go and report to the chairman? Yes' face was full of worry. It's really not good to let Noah carry out such a dangerous mission alone. Julie nodded and gave a concise reply. At least give Noah a teammate. It's useless. The one who said this was Noah's double-edged sword, Lilith. It's not that easy to change what the Lunar Knights have decided on. Besides, a mission is a mission. Following orders is fundamental. It's best if we don't do something that goes against orders. There won't be any results even if we do. You was shocked. Even Lilith can't do anything? No, even if I'm special. Lilith sighed. Besides, that child's decision isn't something I can disobey. The scene suddenly became silent. Julie looked at Ivan, who had been silent the whole time, but found that Ivan was in a daze. She pulled on Ivan's clothes in confusion. Ivan, what's wrong? Ivan woke up with a start. When he found that everyone was looking at him, he quickly waved his hand and shook his head. It's nothing. I was just in a daze for a while. However, whether it was Lilith, Orange Bar, or even Julie, who didn't know how to read people's expressions, they could all see that Ivan's smile was more or less forced. Lilith looked at Ivanli with her green eyes. Are you very worried? Ivan was at a loss for words and his tea-colored eyes dimmed slightly. Looks like you're not just worried. Lilith seemed to be able to see through Ivan's heart and smiled sweetly. You're blaming yourself. Blaming yourself for not being able to help, right? Ivan's shoulders trembled for a moment. At this moment, everyone present noticed it. Ivan, Julie reached out and held Ivan's hand. Her deep red eyes were filled with deep worry. Ivanry-chan. Ya also held Ivan's other hand, but didn't know what to say. Where is Noah now? Orange Bar asked. Does he plan to leave without saying anything? My partner seems to hate parting. Lilith pretended to be relaxed. Although he hasn't left yet, when Kyuji Turyu and Kawai Hokusaki knew that Noah was about to leave, they immediately took Noah away. They said that they don't know when Noah will come back. Before Noah leaves, the two want to fight him again. With that said, Lilith glanced at Ivanly and muttered to herself, not knowing who she was talking to. So, if you have something to say to him, it's best to say it now. Ivan lowered his head and buried his face in the shadow of his bangs. No one could see his current expression. Where's Lilith? Orange Bar asked Lilith in surprise. Doesn't Lilith have anything to say to Noah? Among the girls present, Ivan and Julie formed a temporary tripping double blade with Noah when they entered the school. They knew each other from the beginning. Lilith transferred over later, but she was Noah's official tripping double blade. The people who had the best relationship with Noah in the school were undoubtedly Ivan, Julie, and Lilith. Even Orange Bar, who had the lowest EQ, didn't believe that Lilith didn't feel anything when Noah left. Jolie-chan, Ya also said softly to Julie, Jolie-chan, don't you want to say goodbye to Noah? Yeah, Julie nodded heavily. Her eyes were filled with reluctance, but more than that there was trust. If it's Noah, it's definitely not a problem. That's my tripping double blade. I don't want to remove the tripping double blade from Noah. Not now. Noah is so outstanding. I believe I won't have such thoughts in the future. Lilith showed a beautiful smile and spat out a sentence with inexplicable confidence. He will definitely come back to me. Looking at Lilith's confident expression, Julie, Orange Bar, and Ya all felt admiration for Lilith. Immediately after, all the girls present turned to look at Ivanly. Under the gaze of the girls, Ivan opened his mouth slightly, gritted his teeth, and suddenly stood up. I'm going out for a while. Leaving this sentence, Ivan ran out of the room. Julie, Orange Bar, and Ya all looked at the direction Ivan left and speechless. Lilith curled her lips and muttered, I'll let you have it this time. If you don't seize the opportunity, you won't have another chance in the future. You're tuning in to the Lee May's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.